In the shadow depths of the world's oceans, where currents twist through darkness and the familiar world disappears, mysteries lie scattered across the seafloor. Massive structures, perfectly aligned grids, and objects of unknown purpose rise from the sediment like messages from a time we cannot reach. Some catch faint sonar echoes, others reveal themselves only when the ocean shifts just so, hinting at a design that challenges both science and imagination. From isolated pyramids to enigmatic pathways stretching across remote shelves, these discoveries hint at civilizations, events or phenomena that remain stubbornly unexplained. Watch closely, and you may glimpse the faint traces of something extraordinary, patterns and shapes that defy explanation, inviting you to question what lies hidden beneath the waves and what secrets the deep still keeps. The submerged city off Cuba. Beneath the calm waters off Cuba's western coast, the seafloor drops away into a darkness seldom disturbed by light or sound. It was here, in the early years of the 21st century, that sonar operators mapping the deep terrain of the Yucatan Channel noticed something they were not prepared to see. Across the screen, geometric forms began to emerge from the static, a pattern of lines, angles and shadows arranged with uncanny precision. The readings showed massive stone-like shapes rising from the depths, some aligned in grids, others forming what appeared to be circular plazas and stair-like terraces. The images lasted only moments before the submersible drifted beyond range, but those few moments were enough to ignite one of the most intriguing underwater mysteries ever recorded. The discovery was made by a team of Canadian ocean engineers working with a Cuban research vessel off the Guanahacabibes Peninsula. Their mission was a technical one, to survey the seafloor for geological structures that could explain unusual tectonic activity in the area. Yet as the submersible's sonar swept over the abyss, it revealed something that looked strikingly deliberate. At a depth of around 600 meters, far deeper than any known human construction could have survived from antiquity, stood what resembled the outlines of monumental architecture. The shapes were too angular, too consistent to be dismissed as random outcrops or coral beds. The first reports described rectangular blocks arranged in linear formations, with some structures estimated to be more than 50 meters wide and nearly as tall. Sonar imaging hinted at steps, corridors, and even pyramidal forms buried beneath layers of sediment. When visual cameras were lowered into the murky water, faint shadows appeared where the sonar had traced edges, but visibility was too poor to confirm what they truly were. Still, the shapes seemed to belong to something vast, a sunken landscape lying silent at the ocean's edge. Scientists from the University of Havana joined the analysis soon after, cautious but intrigued. Preliminary models based on the sonar data suggested a city-like layout stretching across several square kilometers. Yet no civilization known to archaeology could have built structures at such depths. Even during the last ice age, when sea levels were dramatically lower, this portion of the Caribbean seafloor would have remained beyond human reach. The sheer scale of submergence made the idea of an ancient city impossible, or so it seemed. For the researchers involved, the deeper mystery lay not only in what had been found, but in what could not be explained away. If the formations were natural, why did they form such precise right angles? Why did the distances between major shapes appear to follow repeating patterns? When sonar signals returned from the objects, the echoes were strong and consistent, suggesting solid material, perhaps stone, perhaps something else, buried beneath centuries of silt. Even if the data had been distorted by currents or reflection, the regularity of the design could not easily be ignored. Attempts to return to the site in later years proved difficult. The deep currents around the Yucatan Channel make extended exploration treacherous, and technical constraints limit how long submersibles can remain stable near the seabed. Few expeditions have revisited the coordinates since the early 2000s, and none have provided imagery clear enough to confirm the nature of the formations. As time passed, the mystery slipped from headlines into the quieter realm of maritime legend, sustained by fragments of sonar maps and the memory of the startled researchers who first saw them. Theories soon followed. Some speculated that the formations could be remnants of an unknown civilization, perhaps one that flourished before the end of the last glacial period, when lower seas may have exposed land now lost to the Caribbean depths. Others suggested the possibility of massive geological faulting, that portions of the continental shelf might have collapsed suddenly, carrying entire land masses downward into the abyss. If so, the shapes on the sonar might be the fractured remains of that ancient boundary, frozen in place as the Earth shifted. Yet neither explanation fully satisfied the data. Geologists examining the images argued that natural processes, though capable of producing straight lines, rarely create large symmetrical clusters of them. In the Cuban case, several of the formations seem to share identical dimensions and orientations, as though built according to a single architectural plan. Meanwhile, oceanographers noted that the region sits atop a tectonic transition zone, an area prone to sudden movements and uplift. If an ancient settlement had existed along that fault line, it could conceivably have been submerged by catastrophe. But that possibility opened even deeper questions about who could have built it and when. For those who have studied it, the mystery's power lies in its ambiguity. The data remain inconclusive, and without direct excavation or imaging, no definitive claim can be made. Yet the sonar records, preserved in archives and analysed by successive teams, still hint at the same impossible geometry beneath the sea. Even after 2 decades, computer reconstructions of the site show symmetrical shapes emerging like ghostly blueprints, rows of structures aligned with a precision that challenges coincidence. In the absence of physical evidence, imagination fills the void. Some envision an ancient city swallowed by rising waters, its towers eroded into shadows. Others picture nothing more than a trick of light and sound, a geological illusion amplified by wishful interpretation. Both visions linger, suspended between science and myth. The truth lies somewhere beneath the silt, waiting in a silence disturbed only by the currents. The seabed where the discovery was made remains one of the least explored areas in the Caribbean. Sonar scans continue to reveal hints of terraces, escarpments, and strange symmetrical depressions, features that suggest an environment far more complex than a simple flat plain. Each pass of a modern survey ship brings a chance of rediscovering the anomaly, of seeing once more what those first operators saw flickering on their screens. But until that happens, the mystery endures as one of the most haunting in marine archaeology. A vision of stone and shadow glimpsed beneath 600 meters of water, where light cannot reach and history refuses to speak. For now, the sea keeps its secret, and the city, if it ever truly existed, rests unseen, preserved in silence beyond the reach of time. The Azores Pyramid. It began with what should have been an unremarkable sonar sweep of the ocean floor, carried out by a fisherman navigating near the Azores. Yet as the readings appeared on his screen, familiar contours gave way to something unexpected. Lines too straight to be natural began to take form, intersecting with deliberate precision until a distinct shape emerged, a vast pyramid seemingly rising from the seabed itself. Resting between São Miguel and Terceira, it appeared almost architectural in proportion, its angles too exact, its symmetry too complete for coincidence. And yet, no expedition has ever descended to confirm what the sonar revealed. Reports of the anomaly began circulating in 2013, after a sailor named Diocleciano Silva shared the images captured from his navigation instruments. The structure he recorded seemed to rise from a depth of about 40 meters, with 4 sharply defined faces converging toward a single peak. The data spread quickly across the islands, attracting the attention of geologists, divers, and local officials who studied its measurements with fascination and doubt. Surrounded by deep channels and featureless plains, the formation appeared isolated, an enigma set apart from the rugged volcanic landscape that formed the Azores themselves. Geologically, the Azores rest along a volatile ridge where 3 tectonic plates converge, the North American, Eurasian, and African. Volcanic activity has sculpted the region for millennia, creating steep slopes, submerged calderas, and ridges that stretch across the ocean floor. Yet even in such a dynamic landscape, the pyramid's symmetry felt unnatural. The human eye tends to find order in chaos, but this formation's lines resisted coincidence. Some researchers proposed it could be the remnant of an ancient volcanic cone eroded into a pyramidal form. Others quietly wondered if it might be the submerged ruins of a structure far older than known Azorean settlement, which dates back only to the 15th century. Satellite imagery added to the intrigue. When cross-referenced with sonar data, certain areas near the site displayed faint rectilinear patterns beneath the surface. Though interpretations varied, the ocean floor there is layered with volcanic basalt and fine sediment. both capable of reflecting sonar signals in misleading ways. Even so, the consistent angular returns from multiple scans challenged simple geological explanations. Marine geologists expressed caution, noting that underwater illusions are common in acoustic mapping. But silence from official channels only deepened the sense of mystery. Local folklore soon merged with the discovery. Fishermen who had long spoken of hidden stones and strange underwater shapes near the islands found new weight in their tales. The Azores themselves have long been tied, in myth and speculation, to the story of Atlantis. Early explorers once believed these islands were the peaks of a drowned continent, remnants of a forgotten world. The sonar pyramid, to some, seemed like a sign that such legends had some root in truth. Even scholars who dismissed the Atlantis theory entirely admitted that the find was unusually precise for a geological anomaly. Oceanographers who revisited the area in later years reported subtle magnetic fluctuations near the coordinates recorded by Silver. These anomalies, though faint, suggested that metallic elements might be buried within the formation or embedded in its surrounding crust. Such readings are not uncommon along tectonic ridges, yet their concentration around a single geometric feature rekindled debate. Could the pyramid conceal deposits of magnetite or basalt unusually rich in iron, or was something else shaping the readings, something artificial beneath layers of stone and sediment? Some divers have claimed to glimpse faint outlines on the seafloor when currents are calm and visibility clears for a few precious moments. They describe terraces cut into the seabed and surfaces that seem too flat, too deliberate. No photographic evidence has ever confirmed these accounts, but the repetition of similar details among different witnesses adds to the uncertainty. The ocean, ever shifting, rarely allows clear observation for long. Each attempt to reach the site ends with the same result: disturbed sediment, distorted readings, and silence from the depths. Any effort to organise an official investigation slowly faded, leaving the matter unresolved. Government agencies offered few statements, and the scientific community, wary of sensationalism, showed little interest in funding an expedition. Without direct observation, the sonar image remains unverified, a digital imprint suspended between science and speculation. Over a decade later, no diver or submersible has reached the site to confirm its shape or material. The pyramid's existence persists only through data charts, local testimony, and scattered images that continue to circulate quietly online. Those who revisit the scans note that the base appears oriented almost perfectly to the cardinal points, a detail that fuels further debate. Could shifting tectonic forces have accidentally aligned a natural formation so precisely? Or might the geometry point to something crafted long before the islands were known to history? The seabed around the Azores has yielded fragments of volcanic glass, marine fossils and magnetic anomalies, but nothing that clarifies the question. Each new reading seems to reinforce the same conclusion, that something lies there, vast and orderly, yet unseen. And so the ocean keeps its symmetry secret, holding the question just beyond the reach of certainty. The Yellow Brick Road Formation. When the exploration vessel descended toward the volcanic ridge north of Hawaii, no one expected to find order beneath a landscape shaped by eruptions. The cameras swept across jagged rock and layers of cooled lava until suddenly the terrain shifted, flattening into a surface so regular it looked constructed. Pale light from the submersible revealed a path of angular stones, each one fractured but aligned as though part of an ancient walkway. Recorded in 2022 within the Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument, the strange formation was soon given a name that captured both its colour and its impossibility: the Yellow Brick Road. The anomaly was first noticed by a remotely operated vehicle sent to map the volcanic ridges thousands of meters below the surface. As its instruments relayed data back to the surface, the cameras revealed a perfect stretch of segmented rock, rising slightly from the seabed like the remnants of a road carved long ago. The shapes were unnervingly uniform, squares and rectangles separated by clean, dark seams, so precise that they seemed the result of human intention rather than the chaos of the deep. At first glance, the structure seemed too precise to be natural. The regularity of its shapes, the evenness of its spacing, and the sharpness of its edges suggested the hand of a builder rather than the chaos of geology. For a few moments, even the expedition team expressed disbelief. their voices captured on the live feed as they tried to make sense of what they were seeing. It was a road, or something that looked very much like one, winding upward along the ridge of an underwater volcano. Yet there are no cities in that part of the Pacific, no ruins or foundations to which such a road could ever have led. Geologists soon proposed that the formation was the product of nature rather than design. The bricks, they explained, were likely the result of ancient volcanic activity, when superheated lava cooled rapidly under the ocean's pressure. As it hardened, it fractured into hexagonal and rectangular blocks, much like dried mud cracking under the sun. The resemblance to a man-made road was, by their account, an illusion, a coincidence of geology that happened to mimic architecture. But even as scientific reasoning settled over the discussion, the images continued to stir something deeper, a sense that the seafloor might still be guarding traces of a forgotten world. For centuries, stories have circulated of land masses swallowed by the sea, continents that rose and fell long before history began. The central Pacific, with its vast distances and scattered volcanic islands, has often been linked to such myths. Some have spoken of Mu or Lemuria, imagined civilizations lost to cataclysmic floods or shifting crusts. The Yellow Brick Road, though explained by science, carried the visual language of those old legends. To many who saw it, the formation seemed like a fragment of myth made real, a pathway to nowhere left behind by time itself. Closer analysis of the surrounding region revealed other peculiar features. Jagged cliffs border the formation, and the area shows signs of multiple volcanic eruptions layered upon each other across thousands of years. The road lies along a ridge that once may have been above sea level before the ocean claimed it. Tiny samples collected near the formation contained microfossils and sediment that date back millions of years, suggesting a landscape shaped and reshaped countless times. Yet despite these findings, no other section of the ridge displays the same orderly fractures, leaving the Yellow Brick Road as a singular anomaly. Marine biologists noticed something else that added to its strangeness. In a place where the seafloor is usually sparse and silent, life gathers around the formation in subtle ways. Small crabs, coral polyps, and pale sponges cling to the edges of the bricks, as though the structure offers them an unseen stability or shelter. The road, lifeless in appearance, becomes a quiet refuge for fragile creatures in the deep. Even this lends it a sense of purpose, as though the ocean has found its own use for something long forgotten. When viewed through the submersible's lights, the stones shimmer with a golden hue, created by the mix of oxidized minerals and the warm tones of artificial illumination. The glow evokes the image of a path leading into the unknown, vanishing into the darkness ahead. Viewers watching the live expedition described feeling an inexplicable pull, as if they were witnessing the threshold of something both ancient and unreachable. Scientists offered geological explanations, but fascination rarely yields to certainty. The mind resists the idea that such perfect order could arise from chance alone. Some oceanographers have suggested that the pattern might represent an intermediate stage between cooling basalt and later tectonic fracturing, a brief geological moment captured in stone. Others wonder whether a past seismic event might have shifted the layers in a way that accentuated their unnatural symmetry. Whatever the mechanism, it has not been observed anywhere else in the region with equal clarity. The formation remains a solitary feature, standing apart from the chaotic volcanic terrain that surrounds it. Among those who study the deep sea, there is a quiet recognition that such discoveries occupy a strange middle ground between knowledge and wonder. Technology now allows cameras to reach places once beyond imagination, yet the images they return often raise more questions than they answer. The Yellow Brick Road has become a symbol of that tension, proof of how the ocean, even when revealed, remains profoundly mysterious. Beneath kilometers of pressure and cold, where sound fades and color dies, even a simple fracture in stone can look like evidence of something more. In the months after the footage was released, speculation drifted across forums and research circles alike. Some viewers believed they were seeing evidence of an ancient human construction now reclaimed by the sea, perhaps built when the world's coastlines were vastly different. Others accepted the scientific explanation, but still found themselves unsettled by the precision of what they saw. The image lingers because it touches on something fundamental, the desire to find meaning, even where nature might only be playing at design. The ocean floor is an archive written in pressure and silence, its pages scattered and eroded over millions of years. Each discovery, a ridge, a cavity, a mysterious formation, adds a fragment to that unfinished story. The yellow brick road remains one of those fragments, a scene caught between the measurable and the imagined. When the submersible lights fade and the cameras rise back toward the surface, the formation slips once more into darkness, its edges vanishing into the deep. Somewhere beneath that still water, the path continues, leading onward into the dark where no one has yet followed. The Golden Orb of Alaska. Across the remote stretches of Alaska's wilderness, where frost still clings to the shadows of spruce and the wind moves unbroken across fields of snow, silence takes on a weight of its own. The landscape seems untouched, shaped only by the slow persistence of time and the steady patience of ice. In places where the permafrost lies thick beneath the soil, what lies buried often remains so for centuries, preserved in cold layers that remember long-forgotten seasons. It was within this stillness that a team of surveyors, mapping mineral deposits along the interior's rugged valleys, uncovered something that did not belong. What emerged from the frozen ground shimmered faintly under the pale Arctic sun, its surface too smooth, too symmetrical to be dismissed as a quirk of geology. At first, the find seemed small and unremarkable, a dull, metallic shape half encased in frozen soil, but as the team carefully cleared the surrounding ice, the full outline of the object revealed itself. A perfect sphere, roughly the size of a human head, gleaming gold beneath a crust of dirt and frost. The light caught its surface in a way that made it seem almost alive, reflections moving like liquid metal. No seams were visible, no signs of corrosion or weathering, and no tool marks to suggest it had been manufactured by any known process. Its symmetry was absolute, as though it had been shaped by forces far beyond the ordinary reach of human craftsmanship or nature's slow erosion. When the orb was first retrieved, the team assumed it to be a piece of equipment, perhaps a component of some earlier survey mission, or a relic from Cold War testing grounds that once dotted Alaska's remote regions. But the object was heavier than expected, far denser than any hollow sphere of that size should have been. Instruments measured its weight at nearly 20 kilograms, its composition unidentifiable with the portable scanners the team carried. Attempts to scratch or mark its surface failed. The metal resisted every effort, remaining unblemished even under direct impact from a steel chisel. News of the discovery travelled quickly through the tight network of Alaskan researchers and explorers. Within weeks, geologists and metallurgists arrived at the site, drawn by the possibility of uncovering something unknown within the permafrost. Samples from the surrounding soil were dated and catalogued, revealing no evidence of industrial contamination or modern material nearby. The layer in which the sphere was found had been undisturbed for thousands of years, its sediments compacted and frozen long before recorded human presence in the region. That detail alone casts doubt on any explanation grounded in modern history. Under laboratory lights, the orb became even stranger. When exposed to high-intensity spectroscopy, its surface reflected wavelengths in irregular patterns, hinting at an alloy unknown in conventional databases. The structure beneath its surface seemed layered, almost organic, with microscopic ridges and striations that did not correspond to machining or casting. Some scientists proposed that it could be a natural formation, perhaps a concretion of metallic minerals shaped by pressure and chemical reaction beneath the ice. But no known process could yield such flawless geometry, and certainly not one so uniformly metallic in composition. Theories began to diverge. A few researchers speculated that it might be a fragment from a meteorite, an extraterrestrial remnant that melted and re-solidified upon impact. Yet meteorites are rarely spherical, and none possess such a polished uniform surface. Others suggested it could be a remnant of human manufacture from an unknown culture, or an experiment predating official records. That idea gained little support, for there were no traces of habitation or technology within hundreds of kilometers of the site. The tundra around the discovery remained as untouched as it had been for millennia, its only witnesses the frozen rivers and the faint tracks of migrating caribou. When electrical probes were applied to test conductivity, the orb behaved in unexpected ways. It emitted faint, low-frequency vibrations that ceased the moment contact was broken. The readings were inconsistent and could not be replicated with precision, but they added to the unease surrounding the object. In subsequent tests, temperature fluctuations appeared to trigger subtle magnetic shifts within the sphere, as though it responded to environmental changes. None of the scientists could agree on what these results meant, and the equipment itself offered no clear answers. Government representatives soon arrived, citing concerns about the material's possible connection to military or aerospace activity. The orb was quietly removed from the research facility under the supervision of federal officials, its destination undisclosed. Local newspapers reported briefly on the event before the story faded, eclipsed by more immediate headlines. To this day, no official record details where the object was taken or whether further analysis was ever completed. Those who had handled it during its brief stay in Alaska described it in careful, hesitant terms, something that seemed inert yet oddly present, as if holding within its perfect form a quiet tension that defied explanation. In the years that followed, whispers of similar objects surfaced from other parts of the world, metallic spheres unearthed from deserts, jungles, and ancient strata, each sharing that same uncanny smoothness and resilience. Some proved to be industrial debris, remnants of old satellites or equipment lost to time, yet none matched the precise weight, composition, or density of the Alaskan sphere. Its uniqueness only deepened the mystery, suggesting either an isolated anomaly or a discovery that had yet to be fully understood. Today, the site where the orb was found lies buried again beneath snow and silence. The excavation pits have filled with ice melt, and the coordinates of the discovery are known only to a handful of researchers who were there that day. The story persists mostly in fragments, field notes, half-archived images, and brief communications exchanged before the object was taken away. Those who remember it describe the light of that day, how it struck the sphere and scattered in every direction, turning the frozen valley into a chamber of gold. Whatever its origin, the orb endures, unmoving, unyielding, and unanswered, as if waiting for someone who will finally understand. The lost grid of Cuba's deep shelf. In a dimly lit laboratory along Cuba's northern coast, the hum of outdated machines filled the air as a marine geologist revisited a set of forgotten sonar recordings. The tapes, coated with a fine layer of dust, had been stored for more than a decade, relics from early deep-sea mapping expeditions that charted the Yucatan Basin. The images that began to reappear on the monitor were faint and unstable, their lines wavering with static interference. Yet within the distortions, something orderly took shape. Across the grainy field of data, a network of straight lines began to emerge, precise, parallel, intersecting at right angles with a regularity that seemed wholly at odds with the chaotic nature of the seafloor. The researcher slowed the playback, tracing the faint outlines as they stabilized into clearer relief. What appeared was a pattern that should not have existed, a grid-like structure stretching for kilometers across the submerged plateau west of the island. Each segment maintained nearly identical spacing, forming rectangular divisions that mirrored the street layouts of ancient cities seen from above. The more the images were adjusted for clarity, the more deliberate the geometry appeared. What was meant to be a simple reanalysis of seismic data now resembled an architectural blueprint etched into the depths. The coordinates matched an area long known for its unusual magnetic readings and abrupt depth shifts, yet none of these factors could account for such symmetrical precision. During the 1960s and 1970s, when Cuban and Soviet vessels carried out joint geological surveys across the same region, several crews reported unexplained instrument failures along that very shelf. Compass needles drifted unpredictably, and submersible sensors registered magnetic pulses that never correlated with known deposits. At the time, these were dismissed as calibration errors, yet when mapped decades later, the anomalies corresponded almost perfectly with the coordinates of the rediscovered grid. It was as though the seabed had long been signalling its presence through distortions no one thought to interpret. Far below the waves, Cuba's deep shelf extends outward into the Gulf, a region shaped by violent tectonic activity and submerged sediment plains. It is a landscape of abrupt ridges, fault scars, and deposits that have shifted over millennia under the pressure of colliding plates. To find perfect geometry in such a landscape defied logic. Geological processes produce fractures, not alignment. Erosion carves chaos, not design. Yet the recovered data suggested an organized network, one that seemed to occupy the contours of the plateau with impossible intention. When digital overlays were run against more recent bathymetric surveys, faint echoes of the same grid appeared, suggesting that whatever lay there had not entirely vanished. In the cold silence of the abyss, such precision appears almost luminous against the irregular folds of volcanic crust. Sonar beams scatter off jagged terrain, yet along this particular plateau they return in crisp alignment, as if tracing the edges of a submerged architecture that has resisted both erosion and obscurity. Sediment cores extracted from nearby slopes contain mixed signatures, igneous fragments beside compacted silt, suggesting that part of the shelf had once been exposed before sinking abruptly beneath encroaching waters. Subsequent expeditions attempted to verify the anomaly with modern equipment, but the ocean was unwilling to cooperate. Strong currents distorted readings, fine sediment-veiled visibility, and the depth, more than 600 meters, made direct observation costly and uncertain. The teams that ventured out returned with partial images and contradictory results. In some scans, the lines reappeared as though carved into the seabed itself. In others, they vanished completely, replaced by indistinct shadows. Each new attempt deepened the confusion, turning what might have been dismissed as an error into a recurring enigma. The more the area was studied, the more it resisted explanation. On board the research vessels, nights stretched long as analysts gathered around dim monitors, their faces lit by the ghostly glow of sonar readouts. Each new pass over the grid brought a mixture of anticipation and doubt. The lines flickered in and out of focus like the trace of a civilization glimpsed through time itself. Some nights the pattern would seem to expand beyond the frame, prompting hurried recalibrations and murmurs that something vast lay beneath their instruments, waiting to be mapped by steadier hands. Among those who examined the data, opinions fractured. Some argued that the grid was an artifact of the scanning process, reflections created by overlapping sonar beams or interference from mineral layers below the sediment. Others believed the patterns too consistent, too clean to be chance. A few quietly suggested that they might represent the buried remnants of an ancient landmass, perhaps one lost during dramatic sea level rises at the end of the last ice age. None of these ideas satisfied everyone, and the absence of physical samples from the site left each theory suspended in uncertainty. In time, interest faded, and the data once again slipped into the archives, waiting for someone else to find meaning in its lines. Years later, when digital imaging technology improved, researchers attempted one final reconstruction using all available data, combining old sonar, new mapping, and magnetometer readings. What appeared on the composite was unsettling in its clarity. The grid re-emerged with sharper definition, its intersections forming near-perfect squares that extended far beyond the boundaries first recorded. No natural fault lines aligned with it. No known current or geological process could have created such uniform spacing. The image was printed, studied, debated, and finally shelved without announcement, the mystery too uncertain to justify official publication. Beyond the continental shelf, where daylight fades into perpetual darkness, the pattern endures, a silent geometry etched into the ocean floor, waiting for someone patient enough to decipher what time has sought to erase. The Bimini Road. The waters off the coast of Bimini, a small island in the Bahamas, conceal a formation that has stirred debate for decades. Beneath the turquoise shallows, rectangular blocks of limestone lie in linear arrangements, forming what appears to be a paved pathway stretching hundreds of meters. Divers first documented the site in 1968, capturing images that reveal geometric precision unlike the surrounding natural seabed. Some blocks are aligned with astonishing regularity, their edges forming straight lines that intersect at angles rare for natural sedimentary processes. At first glance, it resembles a forgotten road, a remnant of a civilization lost to rising seas. But whether it is truly man-made or a product of natural beach rock formation remains unresolved. Closer inspection complicates the mystery. The blocks vary in size, some weighing several tons, yet they fit together in a manner reminiscent of carefully constructed masonry. Certain surfaces show what appear to be chisel marks, subtle grooves etched into the stone that imply deliberate shaping. Yet geologists argue these could be the result of natural erosion, the slow action of water and sand carving irregularities that mimic human intent. The debate hinges on small details. The angles between blocks, their unusually straight edges, and the apparent grid-like layout of the formation. To a casual observer, the site seems straightforward, but every diver and researcher who has explored the area emerges with more questions than answers. The surrounding environment adds further intrigue. Sand and sediment have shifted over centuries, partially burying some blocks while exposing others. Marine life clings to the surfaces, encrusting them with coral and sponge, giving the formation an alien, otherworldly appearance. Tidal currents have deposited shells, driftwood, and other debris among the stones, creating a dynamic landscape where natural and potentially artificial features intermingle. Archaeologists caution that interpreting such underwater formations is fraught with uncertainty. Erosion, storms, and ocean chemistry all alter the original structure over time, yet the geometric consistency of the blocks remains difficult to attribute to chance alone. Historical context raises additional questions. Legends of lost civilizations in the Atlantic, often tied to myths of Atlantis, have long captured imaginations, and the Bimini Road has become a focal point for those speculations. Artifacts from the surrounding Bahamas suggest indigenous populations inhabited these islands for thousands of years, but no records or oral histories reference a constructed pathway of this scale. If the blocks were deliberately arranged, who created them, and for what purpose? Was it a road, a ceremonial platform, or part of a larger network now lost to rising sea levels? Theories abound, each plausible yet unprovable, feeding a persistent tension between skepticism and fascination. Technological investigations have added layers to the puzzle. Sonar imaging and underwater photogrammetry have provided detailed maps of the formation, revealing alignments that extend beyond what is visible from a single dive. These images suggest patterns that could align with astronomical events or cardinal directions, though the evidence is inconclusive. Researchers have proposed that the blocks may have functioned as markers, guiding navigation or designating sacred spaces. Others argue that the alignment is merely coincidental, a natural consequence of how limestone fractures and settles underwater. Even the most sophisticated scanning techniques cannot resolve the uncertainty entirely, leaving the Bimini Road suspended between natural formation and human craftsmanship. The composition of the limestone itself offers hints and frustrations in equal measure. Some analyses indicate it matches local beach rock, sedimentary stone formed through cementation of sand and shells, which would support the argument for a natural origin. Yet closer study of micro-fissures and embedded shell fragments suggests processes that are not fully understood, hinting at manipulation or placement beyond what ordinary geological forces would produce. Diver observations record flat, level surfaces that would be unusually difficult to maintain without deliberate adjustment, further fueling speculation. No excavation has ever definitively revealed tools, construction remnants, or cultural artifacts that could confirm human intervention. Environmental changes compound the enigma. The Bimini Islands have experienced significant shifts in sea level over the past millennia. A formation visible today at a depth of 2 meters may have once stood at the surface, accessible to people walking along its length. If so, the disappearance of a coastline, erosion of land, and deposition of sediment could explain why little surrounding evidence survives. This raises the question of temporal context. Is the formation ancient, predating known civilizations in the region, or relatively recent and coincidental? The lack of datable material embedded in or beneath the stones leaves the timeline entirely speculative, reinforcing the enduring mystery. Interest from the public and scientific community has persisted for decades. Expeditions continue to the site, employing divers, remote-operated vehicles, and sonar arrays to document every detail. Yet, despite modern technology, consensus remains elusive. The Bimini Road defies simple classification, resisting firm placement within geological or archaeological frameworks. For every explanation rooted in natural processes, a counterpoint suggests deliberate construction, and for every claim of evidence, a skeptic counters with alternative interpretations. The site's ambiguity ensures that each visit produces new observations, new anomalies, and new debates. Perhaps most compelling is the formation's silent testimony. There are no inscriptions, no artifacts, no definitive markers of human hands, only the precise, enigmatic geometry of the limestone blocks, waiting beneath shifting sands and gentle waves. The Bimini Road endures as a reminder that the ocean conceals histories not yet understood, that human curiosity often confronts mysteries that refuse resolution. Whether a relic of an ancient culture, a natural marvel of underwater geology, or a combination of both, the formation continues to challenge assumptions about human history and the hidden landscapes of the sea. The road stretches onward, disappearing into deeper waters, and with each meter, it whispers a story that may never be fully known. The Baltic Sea Anomaly. A ghostly silhouette emerged from the depths of the Baltic Sea in 2011, captured by sonar during a routine mapping expedition. The formation appeared as a massive disc-shaped object resting on the seabed, its rounded contours unnervingly geometric amid the chaotic silt and rock. Initial scans suggested it was roughly 60 meters in diameter, with a shape that seemed too uniform for a natural formation. Researchers pored over the images, puzzled by what seemed to be abrupt edges, right angles, and raised terraces that resembled steps or carved platforms. The object's otherworldly appearance immediately fueled speculation, with voices in the public sphere invoking everything from ice-encased UFOs to forgotten archaeological relics. Silence dominates the site, broken only by the hum of remotely operated vehicles scanning the seabed. Divers who later approached the anomaly reported shadows and textures that defied expectations for glacial deposits or geological outcroppings. Certain sections reflect sonar in ways characteristic of solid metal or compacted stone, while other areas absorb signals, creating a contrast that remains difficult to interpret. Patterns across the surface suggest layering, as if multiple materials were stacked or carved, and a narrow channel cuts across part of the disk, forming a trench-like depression that runs parallel to a jagged edge. Even the strongest sonar resolution cannot fully reveal what lies beneath the sediment, leaving the formation cloaked in ambiguity. The debate over its origin began almost immediately. Geologists pointed to the region's glacial history, noting that retreating ice sheets could leave behind erratic formations shaped by pressure and melting. Yet glacial boulders typically appear irregular, with rounded edges and inconsistent angles, whereas this anomaly exhibits a symmetry unusual for nature. Proponents of an artificial explanation argue that the sharp lines, terraces, and circular shapes suggest deliberate design, possibly the remains of an ancient seafloor structure or even a long-forgotten vessel. Scientific papers remain inconclusive, often hedging toward natural explanations, but the anomaly resists easy classification. Chemical analyses and electromagnetic surveys added layers of complexity. Submersibles reported unusual electrical interference in the water surrounding the formation, disrupting sonar and communications equipment. Some theories suggest the composition of the object may include minerals with magnetic properties rare in the Baltic seabed, though samples have been sparse and often inconclusive. Attempts to retrieve sediment cores from atop the disk have yielded nothing beyond standard clay and sand, offering no definitive proof of human modification. The scarcity of concrete evidence leaves the anomaly suspended between scientific caution and speculation. Examined against the backdrop of history, the mystery deepens and gains new layers of intrigue. The Baltic Sea has a rich history of maritime traffic, from Viking vessels to modern shipping, and submerged remnants of human activity are not uncommon. However, no records correspond to an object of this size or shape being lost in the area, nor do any known settlements or constructions lie nearby, making a cultural explanation difficult. Some researchers propose that it may be a prehistoric formation predating known civilizations, potentially formed during periods when the Baltic basin was exposed to air. Such an origin would place it in a time long before human records, turning the anomaly into a silent witness to eras unremembered by history. Visual inspection adds both fascination and frustration. Divers describe stair-like protrusions rising from the disk, as well as channels resembling runways or roads carved into the surface. Shadows cast by these features create an optical illusion, exaggerating the sense of geometry, yet even careful measurement confirms unusually regular proportions. In certain angles, the formation resembles a mushroom or a crater, while in others it appears segmented, almost mechanical. These conflicting impressions have made photographic documentation difficult to interpret, leaving observers divided on whether they are seeing a natural artifact, an optical illusion, or something deliberately constructed. sediment surrounding the anomaly tells a contradictory story. While currents and deposition have buried portions of the object, some areas remain exposed, revealing textures inconsistent with simple glacial scouring. Microfossil studies indicate that the seabed in this region has remained relatively stable for thousands of years, suggesting the formation has endured unchanged for an extended period. This temporal stability supports the notion of deliberate creation, though skeptics insist that natural processes such as rock fracturing and ice pressure could account for the observed geometry. The debate continues, underscoring the difficulty of interpreting evidence in extreme underwater environments. Mapping the anomaly in 3 dimensions, researchers have produced intricate models showing ridges, depressions, and terraces that challenge conventional geological understanding. Certain sections resemble hallways or tunnels, while others appear as circular nodes, possibly aligned with cardinal directions. These patterns have invited speculation about astronomical or ritual significance. Although no concrete connection has been demonstrated, remote sensing technologies provide tantalizing glimpses but never a full picture, as thick layers of sediment obscure the formation and complicate physical exploration. Interest from enthusiasts and the public has intensified the scrutiny. Amateur divers, journalists and theorists swarm over images and video footage, proposing theories that range from submerged alien craft to remnants of a lost civilization. Yet professional archaeologists and geologists remain cautious, emphasizing the importance of rigorous documentation and skepticism. The anomaly exists in a liminal space between science and speculation, its precise nature concealed beneath the Baltic mud and sediment, inviting fascination without offering resolution. Ultimately, the Baltic Sea anomaly endures as a monument to the limits of underwater discovery. Its shape, size, and strange electromagnetic properties ensure that every investigation raises as many questions as it answers. Whether formed by glacial action, human hands, or some process yet unknown, the disk remains a challenge to understanding, a puzzle resting silently at the bottom of a cold, shadowed sea. No probe, scan, or expedition has yet revealed its full secrets, leaving the anomaly as enigmatic as the moment it first appeared on sonar. Unidentified metallic spheres from the deep trenches. The deepest parts of the ocean have long been a repository of the unknown, yet in the 1970s, bathyscaphe expeditions began returning with objects that defied explanation. Among these were small metallic spheres, recovered from extreme depths in trenches reaching over 6 kilometers below the surface. The spheres, varying in diameter from a few centimeters to nearly a foot, gleamed with a luster that suggested manufacturing, yet their composition baffled researchers. Some samples exhibited isotopic ratios inconsistent with terrestrial origin, hinting at a history that could not be explained by known geology or human activity. These spheres were discovered incidentally, often as instruments that recorded unusual magnetic readings or resistance when grappling with the ocean floor. Divers and deep-sea robotic arms would lift them gently, their surfaces smooth and unblemished despite the crushing pressures surrounding them. Certain spheres bore faint lines or grooves arranged in patterns that suggested intentional shaping, though the purpose of these markings remained cryptic. Metallurgists struggled to reconcile the hardness of the material with the impossibility of natural formation at such depths, raising questions about how these objects could exist in environments devoid of human activity. Provenance became a central concern. The spheres were recovered from trenches in both the Atlantic and Pacific, sometimes thousands of kilometers apart, yet they shared strikingly similar characteristics. Some floated momentarily when released, suggesting a density lighter than expected for metal, only to sink again with an unexpected rhythm. Others appeared to resonate faintly when tapped, producing tones that hinted at internal structures. These properties collectively defied conventional understanding, pushing scientists to question whether the spheres were products of deep-sea volcanic activity, unknown geological processes, or something entirely different. Reports from recovery teams describe an eerie precision in their handling. Instruments that normally failed under the immense pressures of the abyss functioned near perfectly when interacting with the spheres, as if the objects themselves responded to proximity. Sensors recorded minor electromagnetic disturbances during collection, enough to interfere with navigational instruments and sonar mapping. The effect was subtle yet consistent, creating a persistent sense of unease among those tasked with studying them. This anomalous behaviour suggested that the spheres were not inert, passive materials, but entities with properties that remained undefined. Chemical analyses complicated rather than clarified matters. Trace elements within the spheres did not match any known alloys manufactured on Earth during recorded history. Some contained combinations of metals rarely found together, forming compounds resistant to conventional melting or machining. The isotopic composition of iron, nickel, and other elements indicated processes inconsistent with terrestrial formation, prompting speculation among geochemists about extraterrestrial origins. While this theory was met with skepticism, no alternative explanation could fully account for the observed anomalies. The sphere's distribution added another layer of mystery. They were never clustered in concentrations typical of natural deposits or wreckage sites. Instead, they appeared sporadically across thousands of kilometers of ocean floor, often near abyssal plains where geological activity was minimal. Bathymetric charts showed no accompanying formations, trenches, or ridges that could naturally produce such objects. Researchers noted that the locations coincided with faint magnetic anomalies, though attempts to map correlations consistently were inconclusive. Each discovery deepened the puzzle rather than providing answers. The past offers few hints, leaving the mystery largely intact despite careful study of historical context. Maritime records contain no mention of objects matching these descriptions, nor could known submersibles or deep-sea probes account for their placement. Some speculated that the spheres might have been remnants of experimental military technology lost in the ocean during secretive operations, yet the timeline and materials did not align with any documented tests. Ancient civilizations are similarly unlikely sources, given the depths at which the spheres were found, places inaccessible even to modern submersibles until recent decades. The lack of historical correlation only accentuates the sphere's alien quality. Observation over time revealed patterns that suggested functionality rather than randomness. Certain spheres exhibited faint magnetic alignment relative to Earth's field, while others appeared partially hollow, as if designed to contain or transmit energy. Researchers experimenting with scanning techniques noted that some spheres emitted brief pulses detectable only under extreme conditions, resembling electrical discharges or signal transmissions. The sphere's enigmatic behaviour suggested that they were more than inert curiosities, yet what they were designed to do or by whom remains entirely unknown. Public fascination intensified as images and videos of the spheres circulated. Amateur researchers, journalists, and online forums offered myriad theories, from alien probes to lost Atlantean artifacts, while mainstream science urged caution, emphasizing the need for peer-reviewed evidence. Expeditions continue, deploying increasingly sophisticated robotic arms, magnetic sensors, and isotopic analyzers, yet even the most thorough investigations yield fragments of information rather than definitive conclusions. Each recovery mission raises the same fundamental questions. Why are these spheres here, and how did they come to exist in some of the most inhospitable places on the planet? Ultimately, the metallic spheres of the deep trenches resist categorization. Their smooth surfaces, anomalous isotopes, unexplained electromagnetic activity, and improbable distribution challenge existing knowledge of geology, metallurgy, and oceanography. Scientists remain vigilant, aware that each recovered object could rewrite aspects of understanding regarding the deep sea. Despite decades of study, these spheres maintain a presence that is simultaneously mundane and extraordinary, existing quietly beneath crushing pressures, far from human eyes and interpretation. They lie scattered across the abyss, waiting for a discovery that may never fully explain their origin. The Mariana Trench fragments. Pressure and darkness define the Mariana Trench, the deepest known canyon on Earth, where sunlight never penetrates and human presence is fleeting. It was here, in the crushing blackness nearly 11 kilometers beneath the surface, that expeditions discovered shards of metal embedded within the abyssal silt. These fragments were unlike anything typically found at such depths: angular, reflective, and surprisingly resistant to corrosion. Their size varied from palm-sized pieces to shards several meters across, yet none bore the marks of conventional industrial manufacturing. The initial retrieval raised immediate questions. Remote-operated vehicles equipped with robotic arms lifted the fragments carefully, noting that each shard seemed to sit slightly elevated above the surrounding sediment. Their surfaces, though coated with fine layers of silt, retained a metallic sheen inconsistent with ordinary deep-sea debris. Laboratory tests later confirmed unusual isotopic ratios, suggesting processes that did not occur naturally in Earth's crust or known oceanic environments. Scientists were left grappling with the possibility that these materials had an origin beyond conventional terrestrial understanding. Attention quickly turned to the location. The fragments were discovered scattered along a trench floor largely void of other geological anomalies. The Mariana Trench is an extreme environment shaped by tectonic collision and subduction, yet nothing in the surrounding sediment explained the presence of these unusual metals. Deep-sea currents, typically slow and predictable, could not account for the positioning of the shards. Each discovery site seemed almost curated, as if the fragments had been deliberately placed or had resisted movement over millennia. Visual examination revealed further enigmas. Some shards bore straight edges and acute angles that defied ordinary rock fracturing, while others had surfaces pitted with indentations, resembling deliberate etching. Submersibles equipped with high-definition cameras captured reflections that suggested internal structures within certain fragments, like hollow chambers or layered cores. Scientists speculated about unknown alloying techniques, wondering if the fragments represented either highly advanced human technology lost to time or materials entirely foreign to Earth's geology. Magnetic surveys deepened the mystery. Portions of the trench surrounding the fragments exhibited localized anomalies, with compass needles fluctuating erratically near certain shards. Attempts to map these disturbances revealed patterns that did not correspond with typical iron-rich deposits or volcanic intrusions. Some researchers proposed that the fragments might generate weak electromagnetic fields themselves, implying they were more than inert debris. Such phenomena have yet to be fully explained, leaving the trench littered with objects that appear conscious of the instruments used to study them. Chemical composition studies intensified the debate. Analyses revealed trace elements in ratios not observed in terrestrial sources, as if forged under conditions impossible in ordinary planetary crusts. The metals resisted corrosion remarkably, despite constant exposure to seawater and pressure exceeding 1,000 atmospheres. Some fragments displayed crystalline structures suggesting rapid cooling from extreme heat, yet no nearby hydrothermal vent could account for such formation. These contradictory characteristics confounded conventional understanding of metallurgical science. Revealing subtle changes beneath the fragments, the trench floor seemed transformed. Fine sediments around each shard displayed unusual compaction and subtle ripples, suggesting either localized movement over centuries or a persistent influence of currents shaped uniquely by the fragment's presence. In some locations, microbial mats appeared unusually dense near the metal surfaces, hinting at a possible interaction between the ocean's chemistry and the materials themselves. Acoustic scans revealed faint echoes, as if the fragments absorbed and redirected sonar pulses differently from surrounding rock, creating a hidden topography that only revealed itself under high-resolution instrumentation. These observations suggested that the fragments were not merely passive objects, but participants in an enigmatic relationship with their environment, one that remains poorly understood. Explorers noted the fragments' arrangement was often puzzling. In some areas, shards formed lines or arcs reminiscent of collapsed structures, while others appeared entirely scattered. Their orientation, seemingly deliberate in places, invited speculation about a submerged mechanism or artifact broken apart and spread over centuries. No definitive pattern has been agreed upon, yet the possibility of remnants from an unknown civilization or craft remains, tantalizing researchers who must navigate both the technical and interpretive challenges of the deep-sea environment. Historical comparison added little clarity. Known human activity, from modern submersible tests to experimental military submersions, could not account for objects found at such extreme depths. No records indicate the intentional placement of metal fragments in these trenches, and there is no evidence of wreckage large enough to explain their distribution. This absence of context leaves open the unsettling notion that the fragments may predate recorded human history, or that they originate from sources entirely beyond documented understanding. Under these environmental conditions, the puzzle becomes even more complex. The trench is dominated by near-freezing temperatures, immense pressure, and perpetual darkness. Organic material is scarce, and any artifacts that have survived must endure millions of years of sedimentation and tectonic activity. That metallic fragments remain remarkably intact suggests an extraordinary resilience, as if engineered to withstand forces that would crush ordinary materials. Each dive, each recovery, underscores the improbability of these objects occurring naturally, heightening the sense of wonder and unease. Attention from the scientific community remains cautious but persistent. Missions are ongoing using advanced sonar, magnetometers and submersible robotics to document every aspect of the fragments. Yet every survey seems to reveal new anomalies, additional shards in unexpected locations, subtle magnetic fluctuations, or reflective surfaces appearing to align geometrically with others. Each observation amplifies the central enigma. The Mariana Trench fragments defy conventional classification, existing at a threshold where geology, oceanography and history intersect without offering resolution. The fragments rest silently beneath the immense weight of water, resisting analysis, hiding truths that may never be revealed, and preserving secrets in a realm where few can follow. The Caribbean stone walls. Straight lines of stone, unnaturally precise, traverse sections of the Caribbean seabed, forming arrangements that seem to mock natural explanation. Unlike the chaotic scattering of rocks typical of underwater landscapes, these walls stretch in deliberate rows, rising just enough above the silt to suggest intent. Their surfaces, worn smooth by currents yet remarkably aligned, appear as if a careful hand once placed each piece, a hand now lost to time. Sonar surveys have illuminated sections invisible to divers' eyes, revealing intersections and grids that span hundreds of meters. Some lines converge at near-perfect right angles, forming corners that would rival any architectural foundation. Sediment between the stones remains unusually compacted, resisting natural dispersion, and in places, faint terraces hint at layers of construction. The uniformity is striking, suggesting planning far beyond what ordinary geological forces could produce. Anomalous densities within the rocks themselves have perplexed researchers. While limestone dominates the formations, pockets of unusually hard stone appear sporadically along the walls. These areas are resistant to erosion and seem chemically distinct from local deposits. Geologists have struggled to explain how materials so different could arrive, align, and maintain such regularity over centuries without human interference. Each analysis raises more questions, emphasizing the improbable precision of these underwater arrangements. Acoustic mapping adds another layer to the puzzle. Sonar echoes reveal subtle undulations in the walls that suggest depth variations too consistent to be random. Certain stretches reflect sound more strongly, implying either internal cavities or denser mineral composition. Even minor irregularities appear intentional, as if each fragment of the formation had been calibrated to fit a larger pattern now partially buried beneath silt. Attempts to reconcile these readings with known geological processes yield no definitive explanation. The spatial distribution is equally confounding. The stone walls appear across multiple widely separated locations in the Caribbean basin. Some walls mirror each other in alignment and angle, hinting at a continuity or shared blueprint. Yet there is no apparent connection to historical human settlements, trade routes, or submerged cities of the pre-Columbian era. The formations exist in a liminal space, neither fully natural nor verifiably constructed by human hands, a ghostly architecture preserved by the ocean's slow hand. Microscopic analysis of the sediment surrounding the stones suggests long-term stability. Layers accumulated atop certain sections show little disruption from ocean currents or biological activity, as though the walls themselves shielded the seabed beneath. In some locations, shells and microfossils have attached to the stones in patterns that accentuate the linear design, hinting at a subtle interplay between the formations and the life that inhabits them. Magnetic surveys have revealed faint but measurable anomalies along some walls. Compass readings fluctuate slightly when instruments pass over certain sections, a phenomenon unexplained by known mineral deposits in the region. While the effect is subtle, it is consistent, prompting speculation about the wall's composition or potential historical usage. Could these alignments have served as navigational markers, ceremonial paths, or even energy conduits lost to antiquity? No evidence confirms any hypothesis, yet the correlations persist. Visual observations by divers offer both wonder and frustration. Shadows cast by the walls shift with light and angle, revealing terraces, depressions, and unexpected curves. In some areas, stones are arranged in parallel bands that converge at seemingly impossible angles, creating an optical illusion of order and symmetry. The formations evoke the appearance of ruined streets or fortifications, yet no accompanying artifacts or tools provide evidence of human construction. The result is an uncanny landscape, simultaneously familiar and alien. Sediment flows around the stones in unexpected ways, forming subtle channels that hint at long-term interactions between the formations and shifting currents. Fine particles accumulate in depressions between the rocks, creating a natural record of time that highlights the wall's persistence despite the restless ocean. In some areas, small marine creatures burrow along the edges, their activity emphasizing the shapes rather than obscuring them, as if life itself respects the geometry. Microtextures on the stones suggest a process of gradual smoothing, yet the alignments remain uncompromised. Tiny striations and grooves appear almost deliberate, reminiscent of carving or abrasion by tools unknown. Even under magnification, no definitive explanation emerges, leaving open the possibility of processes that straddle the line between natural formation and intentional design. Occasional sonar reflections reveal faint subsurface structures beneath the walls, layers of stone and sediment forming patterns invisible to the naked eye. These echoes hint at a network extending beyond the immediately visible, suggesting that what has been observed is only a fraction of a far larger system. Each survey uncovers subtle irregularities that reinforce the sense of intentionality, yet resist straightforward interpretation, leaving scientists with more questions than answers. The formations extend silently, their purpose and origin hidden beneath centuries of water and silt, preserving an enigma that no expedition has yet unraveled. Submerged ruins of Lake Van, Turkey's deep basin. A strange stillness grips the waters of Lake Van, its surface shimmering like molten silver under a waning sun. Beneath the calm exterior, depths exceeding 450 meters conceal evidence of structures too massive to ignore. Divers who ventured into the lake's abyss reported encountering walls of stone rising from the lakebed, forming rectilinear shapes that suggest deliberate construction rather than natural formations. The sheer scale of these submerged walls hints at an ancient civilization now lost beneath the waters, though no records or local lore provide context for their origin. The first sonar surveys revealed patterns impossible to dismiss. Rectangular formations extend in straight lines, intersecting at angles that imply architectural planning. Unlike typical rock outcroppings, these walls maintain uniform thickness over hundreds of meters, a precision rarely found in natural geological processes. Sediment has partially buried the lower portions, but exposed surfaces display signs of wear consistent with long-term exposure to currents and temperature fluctuations, rather than the chaotic fracturing of random stone. Fragments of pottery and mineralized artifacts occasionally lie between the submerged walls. These discoveries, although limited, suggest human presence and activity, yet their scarcity complicates dating efforts. Attempts to retrieve samples have been challenging due to depth, pressure, and the lake's notoriously unpredictable currents. Each fragment hints at a story, a culture submerged before its legacy could be documented or understood. The chemical composition of the lake itself offers a peculiar twist. High alkalinity and mineral concentrations in the water accelerate sedimentation, but also preserve certain materials unusually well. Metal objects, stone carvings, and pottery fragments resist typical degradation, allowing even tiny details to survive for millennia. In this environment, the walls of Lake Van endure as if suspended in time, their edges sharp and forms intact despite centuries of aquatic burial. Acoustic imaging has captured anomalies around the walls that defy conventional explanation. Certain chambers appear hollow beneath layers of sediment, producing echoes that suggest vast interior spaces. These cavities remain inaccessible to divers, and robotic probes can only skim the surfaces, revealing tantalizing glimpses of corridors, platforms, or chambers that could once have been rooms. The potential scale of the submerged complex hints at urban planning on a level previously unknown for this region and era. Temperature gradients within the lake create stratified layers, influencing both the sediment deposition and the preservation of artifacts. divers note abrupt changes in visibility and buoyancy as they descend, as if entering different realms of water. Within these layers, the submerged walls stand in stark contrast, their rigid forms breaking the fluid continuity of the abyss. The interaction between environment and structure underscores the lake's role as both preserver and concealer of history. Mapping of the lake bed reveals patterns beyond simple walls. Terraces and platforms suggest deliberate levelling, possibly for habitation or ceremonial purposes. Certain stones appear to have been shaped to fit together, forming continuous lines that extend far beyond immediate survey areas. These features, subtle yet consistent, indicate an engineering knowledge sophisticated enough to withstand time and natural sedimentation, yet no written history survives to illuminate who built them or why. Local folklore adds a whisper of narrative but little evidence. Stories of drowned kingdoms and hidden fortresses circulate in villages along the shoreline, often dismissed as myth. Yet the physical evidence beneath the lake bed aligns unnervingly with these tales, giving a faint sense of corroboration. While legends cannot be considered historical facts, they provide a shadowed framework for considering the scale and purpose of the submerged ruins. The interplay of light, depth, and sediment further complicates observation. Sunlight penetrates only marginally into upper layers, creating a gradient that shifts with time of day and season. Deeper sections lie in near-perpetual darkness, accessible only through specialized equipment. This limited visibility preserves the mystery, as divers glimpse fragments of structures before currents or darkness obscure the rest. The effect is disorienting, emphasizing the hidden magnitude of the ruins and the difficulty of comprehensive study. In dating the structures, researchers encounter formidable challenges. Radiocarbon dating of organic material is sporadic, and lithic analysis yields ambiguous results due to the unusual mineral content of the lake. As a result, estimates of age span thousands of years, with no consensus among researchers. The ambiguity enhances the enigmatic quality of the ruins, suggesting a civilization that either predates recorded history or remains entirely unknown. Seismic activity in the region has played a role in the lake's formation and possibly in the submergence of these ruins. Movements of the tectonic plates and episodic shifts in water level may have drowned settlements that once existed on the shore. The combination of natural catastrophe and geological evolution leaves the ruins suspended in a liminal state, preserved, hidden, and nearly impossible to access fully. Exploration continues, driven by a mixture of scientific curiosity and the allure of uncovering lost history. Each dive, scan, and sediment analysis adds fragments of understanding while simultaneously deepening the enigma. For now, the submerged ruins of Lake Van remain a testament to human ingenuity, lost to water and time, an ancient narrative waiting silently beneath layers of silt. As the lake's surface conceals them, these stone walls endure, whispering a tale that has eluded observation. The Pavlo Petri seafloor ruins. Layers of sediment have kept the city suspended in quiet stasis, preserving streets and courtyards as though time itself paused for this forgotten settlement. Rectangular foundations stretch in rigid alignment, forming a network of streets that hints at urban planning far beyond what conventional timelines allow for the early Bronze Age. The arrangement conveys a sense of deliberation, a blueprint designed with precision yet now silent beneath centuries of accumulation. No footprint of modern memory marks these submerged streets, yet the alignments speak of planning, movement, and lives long vanished. Thresholds carved into stone blocks, grooves worn into walls, and faint terraces suggest both public and private spaces, revealing patterns of habitation, trade, and ritual. Every straight line and right-angle corner conveys intent, a deliberate geometry now concealed beneath layers of sediment that protect yet obscure the city's story. Rectangular blocks and parallel foundations suggest a city designed with intent, its geometry startling in a period thought to favour more rudimentary constructions. Courtyards are bordered by stone walls, some forming enclosures wide enough for gatherings, others narrow, possibly for domestic use. The subtle regularity of the architecture conveys sophistication, a structured approach to civic planning that hints at knowledge of measurement and proportionality. Currents have left gentle drifts of silt, tracing the outlines of walls and thresholds that hint at civilization now swallowed by shifting earth and forgotten tides. These fine sediments obscure and reveal simultaneously, creating shifting mosaics of discovery, as explorers and archaeologists attempt to map the site. Natural forces accentuate the existing patterns rather than destroying them, emphasizing the resilience of the structures beneath. Fragments of pottery, small tools, and micro-artifacts appear sporadically between the foundations. Their distribution is uneven, yet each shard offers glimpses into the daily lives of a society now lost. Certain vessels exhibit decorative patterns and clay types originating from distant regions, implying trade networks and cultural exchange far more extensive than previously assumed for settlements of this era. Chemical analysis of the stone itself reveals faint traces of pigments and mineral coatings, suggesting that some walls or floors may once have been painted or treated for durability. The patterns are nearly invisible to the naked eye, yet under specialized lighting they emerge as subtle lines and shapes, hinting at aesthetic or symbolic intentions embedded within the city's architecture. This unexpected evidence opens the possibility that Pavlo Petri was not merely functional but also visually or culturally expressive, preserving a layer of human creativity lost beneath centuries of sediment. Subtle depressions along the streets hint at passageways for carts or controlled drainage. These impressions are faint but persistent, suggesting that the inhabitants engineered the city not only for habitation but also for practical functionality. The alignment of streets with terraces and open areas implies careful consideration of sun, wind, and seasonal changes, revealing planning that anticipates both environmental and social needs. In certain courtyards, stone slabs reveal traces of human activity preserved over millennia. Micro-grooves and indentations suggest the use of tools, repeated movement, or placement of structures atop the foundations. These minor marks, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, indicate a layered history of construction, adaptation, and maintenance, echoing a rhythm of daily life now erased from living memory. Organic residues within the sediment provide rare insight into diet, agriculture, and ceremonial practices. Analysis has revealed traces of grains, plant matter, and occasional burnt offerings, hinting at both sustenance and ritual activity. Microfossils suggest that the surrounding areas once supported freshwater sources and fertile land, environments now vanished beneath the city's aquatic grave. Excavation has also revealed possible harbour areas and access points to the sea, suggesting that Pavlo Petri's inhabitants engaged in trade or communication with distant communities. Stone platforms align with submerged natural features, indicating careful integration of architecture with geography. The precision of these alignments demonstrates an understanding of both engineering and landscape management lost to contemporary knowledge. Patterns of light and shadow across exposed foundations reveal terraces and courtyards in unexpected ways. As the sun shifts, different angles illuminate hidden corners, exposing details invisible at other times. The interplay between light, structure, and sediment creates an ethereal visual tableau, one in which the city seems to reappear momentarily before receding once more into obscurity. Attempts to establish a definitive age remain inconclusive. Radiocarbon dating of preserved organic material provides a wide range of possible dates, while lithic analysis is complicated by the unique mineral composition of the stones. The result is a persistent ambiguity that both frustrates and fascinates researchers, forcing them to reconsider assumptions about the development of early Mediterranean civilizations. Even as maps and models evolve, micro-changes in sediment reveal new details with each study. Previously hidden staircases, thresholds, and wall fragments emerge only to vanish again under shifting silt. The city resists full comprehension, its complexity and preservation challenging archaeologists to rethink conventional narratives of Bronze Age settlement and urbanization. Small cavities discovered within some foundations suggest the presence of storage pits or hidden compartments, possibly used for food preservation or ritual deposits. These recesses, partially filled with sediment, resist full exploration, but their deliberate placement within the urban layout implies forethought and engineering skill. Each cavity provides a tantalizing glimpse into the daily lives of Pavlo Petri's inhabitants, offering insight into practices and priorities that remain otherwise invisible. Pavlo Petri endures beneath layers of sediment and time, a silent city preserving evidence of human ingenuity, urban sophistication, and mysteries that no historian has yet fully deciphered. Circular depressions with metallic echoes. Scanning beneath the frozen surface of the Norwegian Sea, sonar instruments first revealed shapes that defied understanding. Circular depressions, evenly spaced and remarkably regular, appeared etched into the seabed like impressions left by some unseen hand. Their contours produced echoes unlike any surrounding rock or sediment, reflecting signals with a metallic timbre that suggested composition beyond ordinary geology. The discovery immediately puzzled geologists and oceanographers alike. Initial dives revealed depressions ranging from 10 to 30 meters in diameter, some linked by faint, shallow ridges. The surfaces of these structures are unusually smooth, contrasting sharply with the jagged textures of the surrounding seabed rock. Marine growth clings selectively to certain sections, accentuating circular patterns and adding an organic layer that simultaneously obscures and highlights the depression's geometry. Every observation deepens the sense of deliberate formation, though no artifact or tool provides a human connection. Struggling to extract material, investigators have found the process repeatedly frustrating. Metallic readings are inconsistent, suggesting that whatever causes the sonar anomalies may not be uniformly distributed or may exist as a composite of natural minerals and unknown substances. Probes have registered brief electrical interference when approaching the centers of certain depressions, a phenomenon unexplained by water chemistry or standard seabed composition. Each anomaly reinforces the impression that these depressions harbor properties unseen elsewhere. Geological surveys reveal surrounding sediment that appears unnaturally compacted. Layers above and below the depressions differ in grain size and density, hinting at either deliberate placement or processes not yet understood. In some instances, the circular features are partially buried, as if slow sedimentation has attempted to erase evidence of their origin over millennia. The interplay of concealment and preservation gives the formations an eerie permanence beneath shifting sands. Historical context offers little guidance. The Norwegian Sea has no records of coastal settlements, heavy industry, or underwater constructions in the areas where these depressions are found. The absence of human involvement leaves researchers debating whether the formations are purely geological oddities or remnants of a civilization whose traces have vanished entirely. Every hypothesis challenges conventional understanding, leaving the depressions in a liminal space between natural formation and deliberate construction. The enigma intensifies under the scrutiny of acoustic imaging, revealing details that defy explanation. When scanned at varying frequencies, the depressions emit echoes that differ subtly from ordinary rock, producing faint, repeating pulses suggestive of metallic or crystalline inclusions. Some echoes resemble reverberations from hollow chambers. Though no cavities have been physically confirmed, these patterns persist across multiple depressions, implying a coherence and intentionality impossible to attribute to random processes alone. Temperature gradients in the area reveal that the depressions interact uniquely with the surrounding water. Slight anomalies appear in thermal readings, with certain depressions absorbing and releasing heat differently than adjacent sediment. This thermal irregularity does not match any known chemical or geological process in the region, adding another layer of unexplained behavior. Marine life has adapted in unusual ways. Small organisms cluster preferentially along the edges of the depressions, forming dense rings of algae and mollusks that exaggerate the circle's outlines. This selective colonization raises questions about the physical or chemical properties that attract life in these patterns, creating a subtle interplay between the inorganic anomalies and the living environment. Faint linear alignments among the depressions suggest that the formations follow an unseen grid beneath the seabed. While these alignments are inconsistent and occasionally interrupted, the recurring parallelism hints at a system or logic guiding their placement. The possibility of an underlying pattern reinforces the sense of intentionality, yet no definitive evidence has emerged to explain it. Sediment cores taken from the centers of select depressions reveal microstriations and layering inconsistent with natural deposition. These faint grooves run concentric to the depression's edges, suggesting repeated movements or interactions with a material denser than the surrounding silt. The patterns hint at either geological forces acting in highly specific ways, or the lingering traces of objects that once occupied the hollows, leaving impressions now frozen in sediment. Such evidence deepens the mystery, providing a physical fingerprint of activity otherwise invisible beneath the ocean's surface. Repeated expeditions have failed to locate all previously recorded depressions. Some seem to vanish or shift slightly over time, a phenomenon that defies both sediment dynamics and current models of seabed stability. These subtle movements intensify the enigma, as if the formations themselves are alive to some imperceptible force, resisting observation even as they reveal tantalizing traces of order. Chemical tests of sediment extracted near the centers reveal unusual metallic traces. Elements not commonly found in this part of the ocean appear in tiny quantities, though their origin remains unknown. No smelting, forging, or anthropogenic process has been identified that could account for their presence, leaving the anomalies suspended in a liminal zone between the possible and the inexplicable. Sonar images hint at depth variations and terraces within certain depressions, suggesting that the structures may not be merely shallow hollows but complex multi-layered forms. These terraces align with echoes of metallic interference, reinforcing the notion that the depressions are more than passive indentations in the seabed. Their construction, or formation, appears systematic, yet its purpose remains obscure. Each expedition leaves researchers with more questions than answers. The depression's regularity, metallic echoes, and subtle alignment patterns defy categorization, resisting both geological and archaeological frameworks. Whatever created them, their presence silently asserts a logic that is at once precise, deliberate, and entirely alien. Metallic secrets lie within the circular depressions, deep beneath the cold, dark waters of the Norwegian Sea, waiting for an explanation yet to come. The Atlantis Massif Anomaly. From a research vessel stationed above the mid-Atlantic ridge, the seafloor below revealed something unlike any other formation in the surrounding landscape. Jagged ridges rose in unnervingly straight lines, intersecting at sharp angles that clashed with the natural randomness of the oceanic crust. The formation's terraces caught the submersible's lights, casting long, geometric shadows that seemed almost architectural in origin. For a feature born of tectonic upheaval, its precision was inexplicable, prompting the expedition team to pause, collectively questioning the forces that could sculpt such a structure. Submersible cameras recorded terraces and plateaus that appeared unnaturally flat, as if cut and leveled with intent. Each surface reflected light differently, hinting at variations in mineral composition that standard geological surveys failed to account for. Scientists noted slight metallic glimmers embedded along some ridges, a phenomenon inconsistent with typical basaltic formations of the ridge. No prior survey had detected anomalies of this magnitude in such a remote stretch of the ocean, and yet here it was, imposing, silent, and entirely unclassified. From depressions along the massif, sediment was collected that revealed layering distinct from the surrounding seabed. Fine particles accumulated in consistent concentric patterns, forming terraces within terraces that could not be explained by ordinary currents or sedimentary flow. The microstratification suggested either repeated geological disturbances or the remnants of a process absent from contemporary tectonic models. Each layer acted as a frozen record, hinting at events that had shaped the massif in ways both deliberate and precise. Strikingly, temperature sensors showed subtle thermal gradients across the formation. Certain terraces retained warmth slightly higher than adjacent zones, while nearby pockets remained unnaturally cool. These variations defied explanation from hydrothermal activity or ocean currents, suggesting that the massif itself influenced localized water conditions. The interplay of heat and stone added an intangible layer to the anomaly, implying that this was no ordinary volcanic outcropping, but a formation interacting with its environment in ways still unknown. Magnetic readings presented yet another mystery. Instruments detected irregular anomalies concentrated along the longest ridges and terrace intersections. The signals implied dense material embedded within the formation, but attempts to retrieve samples failed to produce conclusive evidence. The readings were consistent and repeatable, suggesting that the massif contained components alien to the surrounding crust, resisting conventional geological interpretation. Marine organisms revealed further peculiarities. Encrusting corals and microbial colonies preferentially adhered to specific edges, leaving other areas bare. Patterns emerged in their growth, accentuating the straight lines and angles that dominated the ridge. This selective colonization raised questions about chemical or structural factors, attracting life in precise locations, creating a subtle living map that mirrored the massif's anomalous architecture. As efforts were made to produce a full three-dimensional map, repeating patterns became apparent, indicating a possible order across the structure. Certain ridges aligned over kilometers, while terraces appeared to echo one another in shape and angle. While irregularities existed, the overarching impression was of a coordinated system, a network of formations obeying a logic not attributable to chance, erosion, or lava flow alone. Exploratory sonar sweeps at varying frequencies revealed further complexity. Some sections produced echoes suggesting internal cavities or density shifts, while others returned unexpected metallic readings. Even areas long thought to be uniform exhibited these anomalies, implying that the massif's interior might hold structures or materials entirely foreign to known geology. Researchers were left to speculate whether these echoes reflected hollow spaces, embedded minerals, or something even more enigmatic. Analysing water near the site, researchers found trace elements inconsistent with the mid-Atlantic ridge's basaltic composition. Minute concentrations of rare metals appeared along terrace edges and ridge intersections, their distribution defying simple hydrothermal explanations. Though inconclusive, these anomalies hinted at the presence of substances either transported from elsewhere or formed under conditions not yet understood, reinforcing the notion that the massif was a site of profound geophysical divergence. Repeated dives revealed microfractures and grooves etched into the terraces, patterns too regular to be purely natural. Some grooves traced concentric circles around terrace edges, others formed short, straight channels intersecting at odd angles. The formation of such features remained a puzzle, especially as no human activity had occurred in these remote depths. Each discovery layered additional complexity onto the massif, deepening the sense that its origin lay beyond conventional science. Historically, no known tectonic or volcanic events corresponded with the massif's dimensions or geometry. Mid-ocean spreading centres nearby exhibited ordinary basaltic ridges and fissures, yet none displayed the precision or scale of the Atlantis massif. Its terraces and angles resisted categorization, leaving oceanographers and geologists without a frame of reference. Each comparison to typical underwater formations only amplified its singularity. Acoustic reflections captured subtle vibrations that seemed almost resonant, distinct from the usual reverberations of rock and sediment. While unexplained, the phenomenon suggested either unusual material properties or a form of internal structure interacting with the surrounding water. These resonances, faint but consistent, offered hints of an intelligence of design, whether biological, geological, or otherwise, that had left its mark on the seafloor long before modern instruments arrived. Despite extensive documentation, the Atlantis massif remains largely inaccessible. Strong currents, depth pressures, and technical limitations have prevented complete sampling or exploration. Even the most advanced submersibles can only hover above certain terraces, capturing partial images and data. The ocean keeps its secrets well, guarding the massif beneath layers of water, sediment, and mystery. As the expedition team departed, the formation's terraces receding into shadow, the magnitude of the anomaly lingered in the minds of all who observed it. Straight ridges, metallic traces, and unexplained resonances suggested a story written in stone, waiting for a narrative science has yet to decipher. The Atlantis massif, buried beneath the crushing Atlantic, stands as a silent enigma, its geometric precision a stark anomaly in the chaotic deep. The Yonaguni Monument. Millennia of shifting currents have sculpted the seabed off the coast of Japan, yet the Yonaguni Monument rises from the ocean floor with terraces and angular planes that defy expectation. Massive stone formations extend in broad, flat layers, their edges abrupt and unnaturally straight, cutting across slopes that would otherwise appear organic and weathered. Even at first glance, the structures communicate an enigmatic presence, a silent defiance of natural processes that commands attention and suspicion. Light from submersibles glances across the terraces, revealing subtle ridges and intersecting lines that form repeating geometric patterns. These faint grooves trace paths across the stone as if following an ancient blueprint, yet the absence of tool marks leaves their origin ambiguous. Observers note that the interplay of shadow and illumination creates fleeting illusions of walls and corridors, emphasizing a sense of deliberate design embedded within the formation. A broad staircase descends from one terrace to another, each step remarkably uniform in height and width, contrasting sharply with the surrounding jagged bedrock. Sediment fills some gaps, softening edges, Yet the overall geometry persists, preserving a level of precision rarely seen in natural rock formations. The alignment of terraces and steps suggests not just structural function, but a vision of order imposed upon the chaos of the seafloor. Curving channels cut into the stone surfaces appear engineered to guide water along specific paths, their gentle arcs consistent across multiple terraces. While their purpose remains speculative, the regularity of these channels challenges the assumption that they could result from random erosion. Each groove seems carefully planned, hinting at an understanding of flow and structure that defies simple geological explanation. Small cavities punctuate certain terraces, shallow yet deliberate, often positioned near edges or junctions. Their placement implies forethought, perhaps as storage pits, ritual spaces, or anchoring points, though sediment partially obscures their true nature. The interplay of these hollows with the terraces and channels creates a complex network, one that suggests functional as well as aesthetic considerations in the monument's construction. Mineral streaks trace along fractured surfaces, their composition differing subtly from surrounding rock. Analysis reveals concentrations inconsistent with normal sedimentation, though whether these result from chemical processes, water interaction, or human influence remains unresolved. The contrast between smooth terraces and these mineral variations enhances the impression that the formation has endured forces both natural and deliberate, layered across countless centuries. Shadows stretch across terraces in a constantly shifting pattern, emphasizing sharp angles and flat planes with every movement of light. This dynamic interplay makes the monument seem alive, almost responsive to observers as they navigate its platforms. The effect is disorienting yet mesmerizing, reinforcing the sense that the stone itself holds a meaning beyond immediate perception. Currents sweeping through narrow channels and over broad platforms interact with the terraces in unexpected ways. Water accelerates along certain paths while eddies form in depressions, subtly highlighting angles and reinforcing the geometry. These natural interactions accentuate what might otherwise be overlooked, allowing the ocean to reveal features that hint at intentional design. Marine life contributes its own layer of complexity to the scene. Coral clings to corners, algae spreads across flat surfaces, and schools of fish navigate channels that mirror the terrace's alignment. Their presence emphasizes the monument's scale and organization, as if living patterns echo a design crafted long before the sea claimed it. Geological surveys reveal layered strata beneath the formation, alternating in density and composition. Some layers mirror the terraces above, forming miniature terraces within the sediment itself, a phenomenon rarely produced by natural forces. These nested patterns reinforce the monument's enigmatic coherence, suggesting a history of interaction between environment and structure that science has yet to fully explain. Acoustic scans detect hollow spaces beneath several terraces, their contours irregular but reflective of the overall layout. Probes encounter resistance when entering these voids, leaving their dimensions and contents largely unknown. The echoes they produce hint at subterranean chambers or channels, adding a hidden depth to the visible terraces and suggesting functions long obscured by water and time. Nearby formations appear ordinary by comparison, displaying typical erosion and sediment accumulation, yet the Yonaguni terraces remain sharply defined. This contrast emphasizes the monument's singularity and raises questions about the forces, natural, human or otherwise, that shaped it. Each terrace and channel seems to exist in defiance of the surrounding geology, a puzzle that challenges conventional explanations. Patterns repeat across terraces with an uncanny consistency. Steps align perfectly, channels curve in measured arcs, and cavities echo in placement, producing an intricate coherence. Whether these repetitions result from design or an extraordinary natural anomaly, they create an undeniable impression of order, a silent language etched in stone that remains undeciphered. The full scale of the monument becomes apparent only when viewed in totality. Terraces extend beyond the reach of light and mapping, hinting at a network of interconnected platforms, steps, and channels that may stretch far further than explorers have yet documented. This sense of vastness imbues the structure with a quiet grandeur, a hidden city beneath the waves that eludes comprehension. Light and shadow play across surfaces to reveal details that often go unnoticed. Oblique angles highlight channels, cavities, and micro-terraces, that create illusions of walls, platforms, and corridors. Each observation adds another layer of mystery, deepening the question of whether the monument is a product of human ingenuity, natural forces, or some combination of the two. Even with advanced imaging and repeated exploration, large sections remain inaccessible, obscured by depth, sediment, and ocean currents. Each expedition uncovers fragments of information while simultaneously raising new questions, leaving the monument suspended in a liminal space between known history and unexplained formation. Its terraces, channels, and cavities continue to whisper secrets that remain just beyond understanding. The Yonaguni monument stands as a puzzle of stone, shadow, and water, its origins and purpose obscured, whispering secrets the ocean refuses to reveal. Deep-sea domes of the Indian Ocean. Far below the surface of the central Indian Ocean, where sunlight cannot reach and pressure crushes all but the most resilient, a series of unusual domes rises from the ocean floor. Their smooth, spherical shapes stand in stark contrast to the jagged volcanic rock and irregular sediment that surrounds them, creating an immediate sense of order in a realm defined by chaos. Despite centuries of shifting currents and tectonic activity, these forms remain remarkably intact, their contours precise and strangely symmetrical. The first hints of these domes appeared during deep-sea sonar mapping missions, but it was only when remotely operated vehicles ventured closer that their true scale became apparent. Each dome spans several meters in diameter, rising in gentle curves that seem deliberate rather than accidental. The surfaces, encrusted with layers of coral and calcified marine life, obscure the underlying material, leaving their composition uncertain and the origin of their shape unexplained. Pressure-resistant cameras revealed shallow cavities atop some domes, circular depressions that catch sediment and marine organisms, like miniature craters on an alien landscape. These concavities suggest functionality, though no signs of human interaction have been detected. The regularity of spacing between domes implies a pattern across the seafloor, one that cannot be easily attributed to random deposition or natural geological processes alone. Anomalies in the sediment surrounding the domes mark these regions as distinct from the surrounding seabed. Trace minerals appear in unusual concentrations, hinting at processes not typical of the Indian Ocean's abyssal plains. While the domes themselves resist sampling due to depth and fragility, these subtle signatures suggest that whatever formed them left a detectable mark on the environment, a footprint of an unknown origin. Current patterns in the region are unpredictable, yet they interact with the domes in ways that amplify the structure's presence. Water accelerates around their bases and slows across their smooth surfaces, creating miniature eddies that highlight the symmetry of each formation. Even at such crushing depths, the ocean seems to acknowledge its geometry, sculpting temporary patterns that enhance the sense of order within the abyss. The surrounding marine ecosystem has adapted to the domes in ways that emphasize their unusual shape. Corals cling in concentric rings around the top surfaces, while small fish weave through channels formed between adjacent structures, their movements tracing the outline of hidden patterns. The interplay of living organisms with these precise formations adds an unsettling complexity, as if the domes act as silent architects shaping the behavior of life itself. Surveys of the seabed reveal that beneath the sediment, the bases of the domes sit on unusually hard layers, resistant to erosion in a way that differs from the surrounding seabed. Some domes appear connected by subtle ridges beneath the silt, suggesting a larger interconnected structure buried just out of reach of current instruments. These hidden connections hint at a scale far beyond what has been observed, a vast and deliberate network of forms stretching across the abyss. Efforts to categorize the domes according to known geological processes consistently fall short. They are too uniform to be volcanic in origin, too symmetrical to be natural concretions, and their material composition does not match common abyssal rocks. The deeper scientists probe, the more the domes defy conventional understanding, challenging the boundaries of marine geology and engineering alike. No historical records provide any clue to their creation. The Indian Ocean, with centuries of maritime travel and exploration, has left no account of submerged structures resembling these domes. There is no known civilization capable of reaching such depths, nor any indication of human intervention. This absence of context deepens the enigma, suggesting that the domes are either a product of processes unknown to science or remnants of a past that has left no trace above water. Occasional acoustic imaging detects faint cavities or variations within the dome's interiors, though these signals are inconsistent and difficult to interpret. The echoes suggest hollow spaces or denser material embedded within the otherwise smooth curves, hinting at an internal complexity that mirrors the external symmetry. Each revelation raises more questions than answers, reinforcing the sense of a hidden intelligence at work, whether natural, artificial, or something beyond current comprehension. Comparisons with nearby seabed formations accentuate their singularity. Scattered rocks and ridges around the domes are irregular, jagged, and chaotic, yet the domes maintain their geometric precision. Even when viewed across multiple mapping missions, the uniformity persists, as though each dome has been sculpted according to an unseen design principle, resisting the randomness that dominates the ocean floor. Speculation has grown regarding their potential purpose. Some scientists suggest they may act as geological markers or relics of ancient hydrothermal activity, while others entertain more radical theories of lost civilizations or unknown underwater engineering. Whatever the origin, the domes exert an undeniable presence, compelling observers to reconsider assumptions about what the deep ocean can conceal and preserve. At their scale, symmetry, and mystery, the domes are more than natural curiosities. They are monuments to the unknown. Their repeated forms, subtle internal variations, and resistance to scientific categorization make them a living question on the ocean floor, challenging anyone who studies them to reconcile observation with imagination. The Indian Ocean domes remain silent, hidden, and largely unexplored, their exact origins and purpose still locked beneath layers of coral, silt, and pressure, teasing the edges of discovery and understanding. These domes linger beneath the crushing darkness, enigmatic forms that hint at forces both unseen and incomprehensible. The organ pipe columns of the Arctic basin. Clusters of hollow, cylindrical pillars rise abruptly from the Arctic seabed, casting long shadows over the dark expanse below. Their surfaces are smooth, unblemished by the currents that sweep the basin, and their uniformity is staggering. Each column nearly identical in diameter, spacing, and height, forming a silent cathedral of stone beneath the icy waters. Satellite and sonar surveys had first hinted at these formations decades ago, but it was only with modern deep-sea submersibles that scientists could approach closely enough to capture their intricate geometry. Every image suggested an order that nature, as currently understood, struggles to produce. Samples extracted from the immediate vicinity reveal an unusual mineral composition, yet the pillars themselves defy conventional petrographic classification. Unlike basaltic formations typical of Arctic ridges or volcanic remnants, these structures contain an interwoven crystalline lattice that has baffled geologists. Microscopic analysis shows parallel striations within the walls of the columns, as if each pillar grew under precise conditions that orchestrated its elongation. Even more perplexing is the hollow interior. Most natural columns of comparable size are solid or fractured, yet these stand as perfect cylinders, sometimes reaching tens of meters in height, with internal diameters that remain remarkably consistent. The spacing between the pillars adds another layer of mystery. Measured in careful sonar sweeps, the gaps align almost like the frets of a colossal musical instrument, suggesting a geometric pattern too precise to be random. While some formations on the ocean floor display quasi-linear arrangements from tectonic forces, these clusters do not conform to known plate boundary stresses or sediment deposition trends. Seismologists have ruled out localized earthquakes or pressure fractures as causes, leaving a hypothesis that the columns might be relics of a process absent from current geological models. Around the structures, marine life has begun to interact, even as the environment remains harsh. Tiny, bioluminescent organisms cling to the interiors, illuminating the hollow shafts with faint glows that shift in response to submersible lights. Deep-sea crustaceans weave between the bases of the pillars, and microbial colonies coat the surfaces in thin films that chemically alter the stone at a microscopic scale. Scientists are careful to note these biological interactions, yet even the most intricate bioerosion observed in these cold depths fails to account for the overarching symmetry. The column's existence seems to transcend both geological and biological expectations. Reverberating from the past, historical echoes complicate the picture further. Inuit legends recount submerged ice towers far north in waters now thick with perennial ice. While anecdotal, these accounts describe vertical structures with a hollow resonance, which some scholars speculate might have been glimpsed during low tide or from shifting ice channels centuries ago. The overlap between folklore and modern observation is tenuous but impossible to ignore. In both cases, the human imagination encounters a form too unusual, too ordered to dismiss entirely. Modelling their formation, scientists have so far produced only incomplete explanations. Some researchers propose a slow extrusion of mineral-rich fluids under extreme pressure, solidifying into vertical shafts. Others suggest that unknown hydrothermal activity was shaped by ancient glacial movements. Yet neither model reproduces the consistency of the interiors, the perfect hollowness, or the meticulous spacing across dozens of meters. Each new dataset adds nuance but also amplifies the sense of anomaly. The pillars are at once familiar in their geological material, yet alien in their design. The Arctic basin's temperature and pressure conditions further complicate the study. Submersibles endure crushing depths and freezing currents, often limiting observation windows to mere hours. Sediment cores taken nearby reveal unusual layering, with fine-grained material accumulating in rings that echo the column's arrangement. Some geologists speculate this might indicate a historical interaction between the seabed and the pillars, perhaps remnants of ancient processes now lost beneath millennia of ice and sediment. Yet this remains conjectural, as no direct causal link has been established. Digital reconstructions offer glimpses into the scale of the phenomenon. When the columns are visualized en masse, they resemble the pipes of a cathedral organ, their uniform heights rising like solemn spires over a frozen underwater plain. Lighting models cast long, eerie shadows that stretch across the seabed, emphasizing the sense of deliberate order. Some researchers have been struck by the possibility that these forms are not merely natural artifacts, but the result of an intelligence, or a natural process so precise that it appears intelligent. The debate remains unresolved, with no consensus forming around even the most basic questions of origin. Intriguingly, the arrangement suggests functional potential, though what that might be is purely speculative. Could the hollow shafts serve as conduits for water or gas under extreme Arctic pressure? Might they represent ancient seabed topography reshaped over time, their geometry a vestige of conditions long vanished? Remote sensors have recorded subtle resonance within the columns when currents sweep through, a low-frequency hum that hints at interaction between material and movement. The phenomenon is faint but measurable, adding another layer to the pillar's mystery. Every expedition returns with more questions than answers. Despite advanced imaging, careful sampling and repeated dives, the Arctic organ pipe columns continue to resist classification. They occupy a liminal space between what is known and what can only be imagined, a testament to the ocean's capacity to preserve enigmas. Even as technology evolves, the pillars remain an enduring reminder that the seabed holds secrets older than recorded history, sculpted into forms that challenge understanding and stir both scientific and human wonder alike. Some truths may never be touched by human hands, preserved silently within the hollow spires beneath the Arctic ice. The Lost River Cavities. Deep under the relentless shadow of the Pacific, channels of emptiness wind through the ocean floor, echoing the shape of primordial rivers turned to rock. They are not rivers as we know them. There is no surface flow, no water visible within the tunnels, but their shape is unmistakable. Winding channels stretching for kilometers beneath layers of sediment and rock, sometimes widening into cavernous chambers, sometimes narrowing into almost claustrophobic tunnels. Their discovery came unexpectedly during deep trench mapping expeditions that were surveying for tectonic activity, yet the sonar traces were too fluid and organic to be explained by known geological processes. The cavities' dimensions are staggering. Some reach heights of tens of meters, with walls curving gently as if shaped by the persistent flow of water over eons. Yet no sediments within these channels suggest continuous movement. Instead, they appear carved and smoothed but untouched for millennia. Geologists have examined similar formations elsewhere: lava tubes, glacial melt channels, and tectonic fissures, but none match the Lost River cavities in scale, form, or the consistent morphology observed along their length. Even the most sophisticated modelling struggles to explain its creation, particularly the tunnels that intersect at precise angles, defying the randomness typically seen in natural fractures. Uncommon chemical elements emerge when the cavity sediments are examined. Compounds not common in surrounding abyssal plains hint at processes that may have occurred far beneath the Earth's surface or involve fluids with a unique mineral composition. Some researchers have proposed subseafloor hydrothermal activity as a possible cause, yet this would not account for the hollowness of the tunnels or their smooth flowing curves. The formation seems to embody a logic or design that resists simple categorization, a hidden network of conduits beneath the ocean floor that has endured untouched through countless geological epochs. Along the margins of these emptinesses, marine creatures move with careful hesitation. Deep-sea fish dart in and out following the curves of the tunnels, while microbial mats cling to narrow crevices, tracing patterns that echo the geometry of the cavities themselves. Though small, these ecosystems hint that the tunnels have existed long enough to influence localized evolution, creating microhabitats in a realm otherwise inhospitable to sustained life. Unlike coral reefs or volcanic chimneys, these spaces offer no obvious energy source, yet life persists in subtle, enigmatic ways. Explorers who have descended into the cavities describe an eerie stillness. Lights from submersibles reveal walls that seem impossibly smooth, tapering gently into darkness, while sonar echoes produce an almost musical resonance as sound waves travel the twists and turns. The effect is hypnotic, a haunting reminder that these tunnels were formed by forces, or perhaps mechanisms, entirely alien to known oceanic activity. No pressure, sediment flow, or tectonic model reproduces the tonal qualities or the seamless continuity of the channels. Written records provide scant clues, yet fragments of indigenous lore describe mysterious submarine rivers beneath the seabed, rumoured to ferry spirits or treasures from unknown realms. While speculative, the overlap between such tales and modern discoveries is striking. The human imagination appears to have glimpsed something real, something persistent that existed long before contemporary science could validate it. Whether these stories reflect memory, interpretation, or coincidence remains uncertain, but they add a layer of haunting ambiguity to the tunnel's presence. Direct investigation of the cavities has proven exceedingly difficult. Submersibles are constrained by the tunnel's unpredictable twists, and sediment within certain chambers is loose, prone to collapse. Only short sections have been traversed safely, revealing passageways that sometimes split into branching networks reminiscent of terrestrial river deltas. These intersections are geometrically precise, suggesting an underlying pattern that is absent from natural erosional formations. The more researchers map the cavities, the more their scale and organization challenge conventional understanding. When water moves through the tight sections, delicate recurring pulses echo, generated unintentionally by the geometry of the hollow conduits. The phenomenon is faint but measurable, raising questions about the interaction between structure and environment, as though the cavities are not inert but somehow responsive to physical forces. Researchers remain cautious, unsure whether this resonance is incidental or a hint at a more intricate design principle underlying the channel's construction. The very geology encasing the area only deepens the mystery. Rock strata adjacent to the cavities are fractured in ways that suggest immense pressure, yet the tunnels themselves remain uncollapsed, unweathered, as though protected by an unknown internal strength. Sediment cores show periodic layering, possibly indicating episodes of submersion and exposure or shifts in tectonic activity, but no conclusive timeline exists. The tunnel's sheer size, complexity, and resilience imply a process that may be older than much of the seabed it traverses, predating known formations in the abyssal trenches. Each foray exposes merely parts of a broader structure, all revealing the same unnerving consistency. Walls almost unnaturally smooth, passages splitting at regular angles, hollows harbouring nothing but silence and shadow. The Lost River cavities remain a reminder that even the deepest parts of the ocean conceal landscapes of impossible scale and design, realms that defy expectation and hint at histories that may never be fully understood. Out of reach of sunlight, these hidden rivers continue their silent course, a labyrinthine underworld untouched by time, keeping its secrets locked beneath the sedimented floor of the Pacific. Echo ridge patterns. A ghostly chain stretches across the abyss, a repeating sequence of ridges that rises from the ocean floor with unnerving precision. From a distance, they look like the spines of a submerged leviathan extending over kilometers in seemingly endless parallel lines. Sonar imagery first revealed the pattern during a routine survey at 4,000 meters, yet the more closely it was examined, the less it resembled anything formed by ordinary geological forces. Each ridge rises with near identical height and slope, as if carved with an unseen ruler, while the troughs between them are remarkably consistent, defying the chaotic randomness typically seen on abyssal plains. The ridge's arrangement is not only regular but symmetrical. Stretching in a chain that curves gently with the contours of the seabed, the formations suggest a design that might accommodate a function or convey a message, though none is apparent. Their alignment does not correspond with tectonic plate boundaries, volcanic chains, or sediment deposition patterns. Researchers plotting the formations in 3 dimensions found that the angles between the ridges repeat with mathematical precision, hinting at an underlying logic as intricate as it is mysterious. Closer observation challenges assumptions about their composition. Rocks extracted from isolated peaks of the ridges are dense and finely grained, yet lack the mineral impurities that would indicate volcanic origin. The surface texture is unexpectedly smooth, showing striations that align perfectly along the ridge axis. Some formations even contain subtle hollows, shallow depressions whose purpose is unknown, yet which echo the same regularity seen in the overall pattern. Geophysicists suggest that whatever process created these ridges acted slowly and deliberately, shaping the seabed with a precision that defies natural erosion models. Strangely, the formations interact with the environment in ways that deepen their enigma. Ocean currents swirl around the ridges, creating unusual eddies and turbulence patterns that do not appear anywhere else in the surrounding plains. Sensors detect faint acoustic anomalies, vibrations that travel along the ridge's length as if the formations themselves resonate under pressure. These effects are subtle but consistent, hinting that the structures are not passive elements of the seabed, but participants in an environmental dialogue that science has yet to fully understand. Even light behaves differently along the ridges. Submersible cameras report an almost mirrored shimmer on the surfaces, as if the rocks are polished to an unnatural degree. When illuminated at low angles, shadows fall precisely along the parallel grooves, emphasizing the uncanny regularity and creating an impression of order almost too perfect to exist in nature. Some researchers have speculated that this may result from mineral deposition over eons, yet the consistency of the effect across kilometers of ridges challenges conventional explanations. Little guidance comes from history, though early oceanographic records occasionally mention analogous formations. Navigators described long lines in the water when sonar was first deployed in mid-ocean trenches, dismissed at the time as instrument error or optical illusion. Modern verification has turned these observations into something tangible, though their origin remains as elusive as ever. Whether the ridges are products of unknown tectonic processes, submerged engineering, or phenomena yet to be classified, they carry a silent authority across the depths, their linear choreography leaving an unmistakable impression on anyone studying them. The region's mapping uncovers further deviations from the norm. Smaller ridges branch off the main chains at consistent intervals, creating patterns reminiscent of veins or lattices. Some of these offshoots are nearly imperceptible in sonar scans, yet their alignment mirrors the larger structures with uncanny accuracy. Attempts to simulate sediment flow, tectonic uplift, or glacial activity fail to reproduce these intricate offshoots, highlighting the deliberate complexity of the entire network. The presence of the ridges appears to distort the local magnetic currents in unexpected ways. Instruments detect subtle deviations in compass readings and low-frequency electromagnetic anomalies above the formations, hinting at an unusual concentration of ferromagnetic minerals or perhaps an unknown structural property of the rocks themselves. These fluctuations are consistent across the ridge chain, suggesting that the anomaly is not a localized quirk but an intrinsic feature of the formations. Geophysicists speculate that such a characteristic could influence deep-sea currents or even guide migratory species, though the mechanism remains a mystery. Shadowed crevices among the ridges shelter lifeforms rarely imagined in the sunlit world above. Small organisms cling to crevices, feeding on the currents that sweep along the formations, yet their distribution is guided by the ridge's geometry, forming clusters that reflect the underlying pattern above. These living networks are subtle, but reveal how the structures may influence their immediate ecosystem, creating corridors and microhabitats in ways that ripple far beyond the initial geological anomaly. Layers of earth draped over the ridges conceal shapes and contours invisible to sonar scans. Fine-grained silt and coarser particulate alternate in subtle bands that mirror the ridge's surface geometry, as if the formations sculpted the sediment over millennia. In some places, buried channels hint at smaller, connecting features that may extend far beyond the mapped area, suggesting a more extensive network lurking under layers of debris. These subsurface patterns add an entirely new dimension to the puzzle, emphasizing that the ridges are not isolated anomalies, but components of a much larger, intricate underwater architecture. The ridge's scale, symmetry, and interaction with their environment combine to produce a sensation that is both awe-inspiring and disquieting. They are simultaneously familiar in their rocky composition and alien in their mathematical exactness, prompting questions that extend beyond geology into the realms of physics, biology, and perhaps even intentionality. Researchers can chart them in exquisite detail, yet understanding why or how they exist remains beyond current knowledge. As the submersibles ascend, the ridges stretch behind them like the spines of a buried, silent creature, guarding secrets no one has yet unraveled. Submerged obsidian slabs of the Coral Sea. Black surfaces gleamed beneath the submersible lights, polished to a mirror-like finish, their edges so straight they seemed almost impossible in the natural chaos of the ocean floor. These were no ordinary rocks. The obsidian slabs lay arranged in linear rows across the Coral Sea, stretching farther than initial sonar scans suggested. Each slab was uniform in size, some measuring several meters in length and rising barely a meter above the sediment. The lack of nearby volcanic sources, the typical birthplace of obsidian, made their existence all the more perplexing, hinting at a history that had left little trace beyond the eerily perfect stone. The slab's surfaces reflected the filtered sunlight that barely penetrates the upper layers of water, creating streaks of silver against the surrounding darkness. When submersibles approached, cameras captured faint glimmers that shifted with every movement, as if the stones themselves were aware of intruders. Their alignment formed near parallel rows, interrupted occasionally by isolated slabs whose placement seemed deliberate rather than random. Geologists studying the formations note that the uniformity extends across kilometers, a scale and regularity that natural fracturing or tectonic activity cannot easily explain. Spectroscopic analysis of surface samples confirms the material as obsidian, yet the chemical composition is unusual. Trace elements appear in concentrations distinct from known regional volcanic sources, suggesting either an unknown volcanic event or a process that transformed ordinary rock into a glass-like state under extreme conditions. Some slabs show microscopic layering, indicating episodes of cooling or pressure not consistent with standard lava flows. These subtleties have led to speculation that the slabs were formed in an environment or through a mechanism absent from current geological models. Currents play an unexpected role here. Though the Coral Sea is not known for particularly strong deep-water flows at these depths, sediment deposition around the slabs is uneven, forming channels that trace the contours of the stones. Over time, the slabs seem to have shaped the seabed itself, redirecting silt and fine sand in subtle patterns. In places, fine particulate has settled against edges in sharp angles, reinforcing the impression that these formations are not passive. They interact with the environment in ways that suggest either great age or careful placement. Records from the past are sparse, yet fragments of seafaring folklore speak of black mirrors beneath the waves, noted in sailors' journals during tempests or receding tides. While most historians dismiss these as fanciful exaggerations, the modern discovery of perfectly reflective slabs lends a faint credibility to these tales. There is a sense that humans once glimpsed something here, perhaps hundreds or even thousands of years ago, and that the stone's presence has always been both magnetic and elusive. The arrangement of the slabs also suggests intentionality. Some rows intersect at right angles, forming geometric shapes that are faint but detectable with high-resolution mapping. Circular patterns emerge in certain clusters, and a few slabs appear slightly elevated, creating platforms or terraces. Researchers caution against overinterpretation, yet the precision across such large distances, without known human or natural precedent, defies easy explanation. The Coral Sea's obsidian surfaces are at once mundane in material and extraordinary in design. The enigmatic structures have drawn marine life, nurturing a tenuous ecosystem in the darkness they cast. Small crustaceans dart along the slab's edges, while sessile invertebrates cling to the surfaces, occasionally covering them with delicate filaments of algae or microbial growth. The presence of life suggests that the slabs have persisted for significant periods, their stability offering shelter and substrate where otherwise the sediment would offer little protection. These ecosystems add another layer of intrigue, revealing how static geological features can guide living communities in subtle, persistent ways. Submersible crews have noted acoustic anomalies around certain slabs. When vehicles hover near specific clusters, sonar and pressure sensors record faint resonances, a kind of low-frequency vibration travelling through the rock. The phenomenon is inconsistent and unexplained, yet its recurrence at multiple points suggests the slabs possess properties beyond ordinary stone. Some speculate that the vibrations could result from trapped gas pockets, interactions with surrounding sediments, or a previously unknown crystalline property of obsidian itself, though nothing has been confirmed. The scale of the slab's distribution hints at a story long lost. The rhows stretch across a seabed previously assumed uniform and featureless, their patterns detectable only through careful mapping and prolonged exploration. If natural, the process that formed them must have been precise and sustained over enormous stretches of time. If artificial, it raises impossible questions. Who could have engineered them, and for what purpose? The lack of associated artifacts, tools or debris leaves researchers at a frustrating standstill, forced to consider phenomena far beyond conventional archaeology or geology. Even their fragility adds to the mystery. Obsidian, while visually striking, is brittle and prone to fracturing, yet the slabs remain remarkably intact despite centuries, or perhaps millennia, of underwater pressure, sediment shifts, and tectonic forces. This resilience only deepens the enigma, as the formation's survival seems almost improbable under natural conditions. Each dive reinforces the impression that the stones were meant to endure, and that their placement, whether accidental, natural or deliberate, was not random. Ultimately, the submerged obsidian slabs of the Coral Sea challenge our understanding of the deep ocean. They merge simplicity and precision, material and design, in a way that feels deliberate yet leaves no historical record. Their presence is a testament to the ocean's capacity to preserve enigmas, to craft forms that evoke awe, and to conceal stories that human knowledge has barely begun to touch. Across the shadowed seabed, the black slabs stretch endlessly, their reflective surfaces keeping the secrets of their origin hidden from all who dare to explore them. The Antarctic Vault Formation. In the unyielding darkness beneath the Antarctic ice, a shadow sprawls across the ocean floor, its form echoing a strange, almost calculated symmetry. Its form is unmistakably arch-like, a chamber partially buried in sediment, yet perfectly proportioned. The discovery was not heralded by fanfare but by subtle anomalies recorded during long-forgotten expeditions, hints in old logs of sunken arches glimpsed fleetingly under treacherous ice. Today, modern submersibles confirm what those early explorers could only imagine: an immense vaulted structure, its symmetry unnerving and its origins a puzzle that defies conventional understanding. Trying to determine the vault's origin, investigators ran into immediate barriers. The structure rests beneath hundreds of meters of shifting ice, rendering direct sampling perilous. Sediment analysis of adjacent areas has yielded unusual chemical signatures, trace elements inconsistent with typical Antarctic basalt or continental runoff. These elements suggest mineralization processes not normally found in glacial or volcanic environments, hinting at a formation history that may stretch back millions of years, long before the current ice sheet stabilized over the continent. The composition itself is enigmatic. Remote spectrometry indicates a crystalline surface, highly reflective in certain wavelengths yet resistant to standard mineral categorization. Photographs taken by remotely operated vehicles show smooth, almost polished surfaces inside the vault, interspersed with ridges that seem to follow deliberate geometric patterns. Unlike natural arches formed by erosion or tectonic activity, the Antarctic vault exhibits a uniform curvature that persists throughout its interior, suggesting either an unknown natural process or, more provocatively, design. Glacial history complicates any narrative of formation. The surrounding seabed is deeply scarred, shaped over millennia by advancing and retreating ice sheets. Massive pressure from overlying ice tends to fracture or flatten structures over time, yet the vault remains intact, resistant to the compressive forces that have deformed adjacent rock formations. Some geologists hypothesize that its endurance may be due to a unique internal lattice structure, invisible to the naked eye but detectable through sonar attenuation patterns. This invisible reinforcement could explain its resilience, though the mechanism for its creation remains mysterious. Interacting with the vault, marine life exhibits patterns that surprise researchers. Tiny crustaceans weave through its lower arches, while deep-water sponges and microbial mats cling to its surfaces. Their presence suggests the vault has existed long enough to host ecosystems, yet the extremity of Antarctic currents and the depth of the site make natural colonization slow. Biologists note that the organism's distribution appears influenced by the vault's internal geometry, as if the structure itself shapes patterns of life in ways that might never have occurred on the surrounding plain. A layer of haunting ambiguity is added by historical accounts, leaving questions unresolved. Early 20th century explorers reported seeing sunken arches beneath ice-choked waters during submersible trials, though these were dismissed as sonar artifacts or misreadings. Folklore from expeditions to the Ross Sea mentions submerged cathedrals under frozen waters, though such tales were long considered the product of extreme isolation and imagination. Modern imaging, however, has corroborated some of these accounts in shape and scale, hinting at a persistent reality behind stories once relegated to myth. Simulating the vault's formation has proven elusive, as each scientific attempt falls short of providing definitive answers. Models of sediment flow, ice pressure, and tectonic uplift fail to recreate a hollow, arched chamber of such regularity. Experiments involving subglacial erosion can form depressions or fragmented arches, but none replicate the vault's smooth curvature or the uniform thickness of its walls. Each attempt to model its creation emphasizes the strangeness of the formation, reinforcing that whatever carved this chamber, it did so with precision that defies current understanding. Within the interior, acoustic readings reveal faint resonances as currents pass through the arches, producing low-frequency hums barely picked up by instruments. This phenomenon has no clear explanation. Some scientists suggest it may be a product of trapped water oscillating in the cavities, but others point out that the frequencies correlate with the dimensions of the vault in a way that implies a remarkable regularity, almost as if the formation interacts with its environment in a deliberate, responsive manner. Resting atop sections of the vault, the sediment itself reveals traces of a hidden story. Layers show intermittent deposition patterns, alternating between fine silt and coarser material, as though the chamber has experienced episodic burial events. This stratigraphy contrasts with the relatively uniform sedimentation found nearby, suggesting the vault itself influenced local deposition, or perhaps that it has been intermittently exposed and covered over geological time. The sequence raises questions about the structure's age, with estimates varying wildly from tens of thousands to millions of years. Each expedition uncovers new anomalies, subtle ridges along the inner arch, patches of material that refuse to match known rock types, and patterns in sediment layers that hint at repetition or symmetry. Researchers are cautious, acknowledging that each observation raises as many questions as it answers. Despite this, the Antarctic vault continues to captivate, a silent enigma beneath some of the harshest waters on Earth. It exists at the intersection of geology, biology, and mystery, resisting explanation while hinting at a deeper history hidden beneath ice and stone. And in the frozen silence beneath Antarctica, the vault remains, a shadowed cathedral of unknown origin, untouched by human understanding and holding its secrets close. The stone rings of the Gulf of Mexico. A series of perfect circles rest quietly on the ocean floor, their symmetry so precise that even seasoned divers feel a jolt of disbelief. The stone rings of the Gulf of Mexico were first glimpsed through sonar surveys, but closer inspection revealed an arrangement that defies natural explanation. Each ring varies slightly in diameter, yet the stones composing them are evenly spaced and meticulously aligned, forming geometric patterns that suggest deliberate placement rather than random sedimentation. No known culture in the region corresponds to their apparent age, leaving a profound mystery about who or what created them. Oddly, the stones themselves bear traces of wear inconsistent with natural erosion. Edges are smooth yet show subtle tool-like marks, and their surfaces exhibit a faint luster when struck by submersible lights. Geologists examining small samples noted unusual mineralization, though nothing in nearby formations could account for it. The consistency of the rings across several locations hints at a sprawling network, as if these arrangements were part of a larger unrecorded plan hidden beneath layers of sediment and water. Currents sweep through the rings in distinctive patterns. When water flows over the circles, eddies form along the arcs, channeling debris and microorganisms into predictable paths. These microhabitats appear intentionally structured, almost as if the rings influence life in their immediate vicinity. Clusters of crustaceans and small fish occupy specific segments, while other areas remain barren, creating an intricate and repeating mosaic that mirrors the geometry of the stones themselves. Historical records offer only fragments of insight. Early explorers occasionally reported seeing circular formations in shallow waters of the Gulf, though their accounts were dismissed as optical illusions or remnants of shipwrecks. Modern mapping, however, confirms that these structures extend far beyond previously suspected limits, scattered over kilometers of seabed. Archaeologists struggle to reconcile the lack of associated artifacts or tools with the precision of the rings, leaving the question of their origin tantalizingly open. Sediment around the stones reveals further anomalies. Layers are compressed unevenly, forming subtle mounds and depressions that conform to the ring's layout. Such patterns suggest that the stones may have been set intentionally to influence deposition over time, creating channels for water or perhaps signaling boundaries for unknown purposes. Even the colour and composition of the surrounding silt vary slightly between the interiors and exteriors of the rings, hinting at environmental manipulation or long-term interaction between stone and sediment. Some of the rings are interconnected by straight alignments, forming pathways that link one circle to another. These connectors are faint yet measurable, as if the entire network represents a map, a system of markers, or a ceremonial arrangement. Attempts to replicate such patterns through natural processes have failed, underscoring the improbability of coincidence. The scale and precision of the rings suggest an intelligence capable of understanding geometry and environmental influence far earlier than previously assumed for the region. Light and shadow play across the stones in ways that enhance their mystery. When the sun or submersible light strike at low angles, the surfaces appear almost luminous, casting perfect arcs across the seabed. Divers report an uncanny effect, as though the rings were designed to interact with light, perhaps for signalling or ritual purposes. The optical phenomenon reinforces the sense that these circles were not merely practical markers, but held symbolic or functional significance lost to history. Acoustic studies reveal subtle differences in how the seabed transmits sound across the rings. Sonar pings return echoes that are slightly delayed when crossing the interiors versus the exteriors, suggesting minor differences in density or structure. These effects are consistent across multiple sites, hinting that the rings influence their surroundings in ways not immediately visible. Some researchers speculate that the stones could channel energy, water, or even sound, though this remains unconfirmed. Temperature and chemical readings also show unusual stability within the rings. Water trapped within certain circles remains slightly cooler and less saline than surrounding areas, creating microclimates that persist even as currents change. These conditions could account for the specific clustering of marine life, yet they also point to a design or effect that has endured for centuries. The interaction between environment and geometry creates a silent, persistent signature that continues to puzzle oceanographers and archaeologists alike. Explorations have uncovered faint traces of pathways leading toward the rings from deeper seabed terraces. These trails are marked by subtle alignments of smaller stones, often overlooked at first glance, but when mapped they appear deliberate, guiding attention toward the circles. Their presence suggests that the rings were part of a larger system, perhaps ceremonial, territorial, or even astronomical in purpose. A network lost to time but etched into the very floor of the Gulf. Swabs taken from select stones show faint traces of organic compounds, remarkably resistant to decomposition in seawater. Analysis shows faint traces of plant oils and pigments, though no known human culture in the Gulf of Mexico historically used such materials at this depth. The distribution of these residues follows the ring patterns, suggesting they were applied intentionally, possibly for ritual, signaling, or preservation purposes. These organic traces add an unexpected layer to the mystery, hinting at a cultural or symbolic function that has endured far longer than any conventional artifact could survive underwater. Even without tools or artifacts, the scale of human ambition required to create these rings is astonishing. The uniformity, the alignment, and the interaction with currents, sediment, and light indicate a level of planning and execution that defies conventional understanding of prehistoric coastal cultures. Each circle is a testament to precision, endurance, and perhaps intent, a message in stone preserved across millennia and hidden by the ocean's weight. The stone rings of the Gulf of Mexico endure in silence, their perfect arcs and quiet influence a riddle older than human memory. The mirror structure of the Pacific Basin. An otherworldly gleam stretched across the seabed, catching the faint glow of submersible lights and reflecting it with an intensity that confounded every observer. The surface was unnaturally smooth, polished like glass, yet large enough to absorb the movement of water above it without rippling. Divers describe it as a mirror that swallows the ocean around it, a reflective plane that seems to exist outside the normal rules of marine topography. Its edges blur into sediment, and even sonar struggles to capture a consistent image, leaving researchers to navigate a vision that feels almost unreal. Shadows play strangely here, bending and refracting along the plane in ways that seem to defy conventional optics. Small particles of silt hovering in the current shimmer when passing over the surface, producing faint streaks of movement that vanish as abruptly as they appear. The mirror's smoothness is so exact that even instruments designed to map irregularities report minimal variation. Every submersible approach produces a distortion in readings, as though the surface itself resists precise measurement. The water around the site contains minor but unusual chemical signatures. Trace minerals cluster along the edges, concentrations that do not appear naturally in this region of the Pacific. These compounds are sparse yet detectable, hinting that the mirror's surface may interact with the ocean chemically, either through leaching or an unknown reaction with currents and sediment. The effect is small but consistent, a signature that lends weight to the idea that the formation is not purely geological in origin. The mirrored surface seems to influence the movements of nearby sea life. Schools of fish scatter at its margins, avoiding areas where their reflections would meet the surface, while certain invertebrates cluster along the periphery, forming delicate, almost ornamental patterns. Even plankton appears to concentrate differently above the mirror, gathering in bands that trace the outline of its reflective expanse. These subtle interactions suggest the surface influences its environment in ways that are both biological and visual, guiding life forms with an imperceptible hand. Contacting or sampling the plane consistently leads to outcomes that challenge understanding. Contact with submersible tools leaves faint, momentary smudges that vanish within hours, while scraping attempts fail to yield conventional rock or sediment. Some fragments have shown a metallic sheen when lifted briefly, yet dissolve or degrade upon removal, defying chemical and mineralogical classification. Whatever forms this mirror appears capable of resisting human intervention, preserving its integrity even under direct observation. Geometric measurements hint at deliberate construction. The plane is not merely flat, it exhibits subtle curvature along axes consistent with precision engineering, forming a nearly perfect rectangle that stretches for tens of meters. The edges align with faint depressions in the surrounding seabed, as if the mirror were part of a larger system designed to integrate with the environment. Such geometry is exceptionally rare in natural formations, especially at this scale, prompting speculation that the surface was shaped intentionally, whether by natural forces previously unknown or some intelligent agency. Old sonar records include mysterious mentions of unusual features in this area. Early mapping expeditions described bright reflections and unexplained planar features, though these were largely ignored or attributed to instrument error. Modern reanalysis of archived data shows these anomalies coincide precisely with the location of the mirror structure, suggesting that its presence has persisted unaltered for decades, long before submersibles could approach and record it visually. The mirror's reflective properties amplify every motion above it. Waves ripple across the surface with a subtle brilliance, magnifying the smallest disturbance in water density or temperature. Currents appear to bend slightly as they pass over the plane, creating faint eddies and microturbulence that are absent elsewhere. These interactions are consistent enough to suggest the mirror has physical properties that affect flow dynamics, creating an invisible influence on the surrounding ocean that extends beyond visual reflection. Light behaves strangely at different angles. When illuminated obliquely, the mirror reflects a distorted image of submersibles, sometimes appearing elongated or fragmented. Sensors detect minute fluctuations in intensity and wavelength, hinting at a composition that refracts or polarizes light in unexpected ways. Researchers have hypothesized that microscopic crystal structures or an unknown mineralogical formation may produce this effect, though no sample has yet confirmed such a hypothesis. Sound-based surveys yield equally baffling results. Sonar pulses do not return conventional echoes when striking the mirror. Instead, they scatter irregularly, producing faint, shimmering distortions on the display. These reflections vary subtly with tidal flow, suggesting the plane interacts with pressure and sound waves differently from the surrounding sediment. The anomaly acts as a sensor or filter of sorts, a surface that shapes both light and sound in ways that remain largely inscrutable. The topography itself seems altered in the mirror's vicinity. Sediment drifts accumulate along precise contours at the edges, forming narrow channels that mirror the plane's outline. Small mounds and depressions repeat its shape over several meters, as though the seabed itself has adapted to accommodate the reflective surface. This interplay between surface and sediment implies either a long-term environmental influence or the careful placement of stones and minerals to achieve such consistency. Hypotheses about its origin span a broad spectrum. Some propose it is the product of volcanic activity, cooled and polished by unknown processes. Others suggest it could be an artifact of an ancient, submerged civilization, deliberately arranged as a ceremonial or functional plane. Its persistence, resilience, and unusual properties challenge every existing explanation, leaving researchers to grapple with possibilities that border on the fantastical. Those who linger above the mirror for long periods describe a faint disorientation, as if space itself defies normal perception. Even experienced divers describe an uncanny awareness, as though the structure is not merely observed but is observing in return. The effect reinforces the notion that the mirror is more than a passive feature. It interacts with light, water, life, and human perception in ways that have yet to be fully understood. On the luminous surface, the ocean's image keeps its secret, waiting patiently for those who might perceive the logic behind its impossible form. The submerged monolith of Sicily. A solitary column rises from the seafloor, massive and unyielding, its surface carved with lines that defy simple explanation. Divers first encountered the monolith near Pantelleria Vecchia Island, its 15-ton bulk resting in near-pristine condition despite centuries underwater. The scale alone is staggering, but it is the precision of the carvings that draws unease. Straight grooves etched with uniform depth, intersecting patterns that suggest deliberate design rather than erosion. Whoever placed or created it operated with a mastery of material and geometry far beyond what historians would expect from the region's earliest known inhabitants. The water around the monolith moves differently from that in the surrounding areas. Currents shift subtly, eddies forming at their corners and fading again with an almost rhythmic consistency. Tiny suspended particles catch these microcurrents, tracing invisible lines in the glow of submersible lights, revealing movement patterns that echo the monolith's angular form. It is as if the stone itself influences its environment, an immovable presence bending water in silent, deliberate ways. When light strikes the monolith at low angles, shadows emerge that exaggerate its carvings, giving the impression of shifting surfaces. On some dives, explorers have reported patterns that seem to rearrange themselves as they circle the column, an optical phenomenon that makes the monolith appear alive, subtly interacting with observation itself. Even seasoned oceanographers describe a disconcerting sensation, as if the stone observes as much as it is observed. The composition of the monolith is equally puzzling. Laboratory analysis of small fragments removed during careful sampling revealed a density and crystalline structure atypical of local geology. No nearby quarries or volcanic deposits match its material, suggesting either transport from afar or a technique lost to time. Its survival in the face of currents, sedimentation, and centuries of chemical interaction points to a durability that borders on extraordinary, challenging conventional understanding of ancient stoneworking and preservation. Evidence of tool marks confirms intentional shaping, yet they do not correspond to techniques documented in Sicily's early human history. The grooves and notches are sharply defined and consistent, indicating precision work using methods unknown to the archaeologists studying the site. Even erosion has been uneven. Softer channels have dulled slightly over time, while harder segments retain crisp edges, hinting at selective craftsmanship or an understanding of stone properties beyond current assumptions. Small marine creatures have claimed niches around the monolith, but their distribution is strangely patterned. Crustaceans gather in certain recesses, while starfish cling to areas protected from direct currents. These natural inhabitants appear to have adapted to subtle differences in water flow, pressure and texture created by the monolith, forming clusters that almost mirror its carvings. The interplay between stone and life forms a living diagram, a silent commentary on the monolith's environmental influence. Scrutinizing the surrounding seabed exposed hidden formations that defied easy explanation. Sediment compacts unevenly around the column, rising slightly along its base and falling away in gentle troughs at predictable distances. These microtopographies are consistent across all recorded dives, suggesting the monolith has reshaped its immediate environment over time, either through physical displacement during placement or through centuries of interaction with currents and biological activity. Divers have noted acoustic anomalies when approaching the stone. Echoes produced by sonar or submersible instruments return distorted signals, their patterns shifting subtly depending on angle and distance. These irregularities imply that the monolith's material or structure interacts with sound in unexpected ways, producing variations that hint at internal density changes or layered composition. The anomaly in sound propagation adds another layer to the enigma, challenging researchers to reconcile its physical presence with the signals it generates. Historical speculation deepens the mystery. The monolith predates recorded human activity on Pantelleria Vecchia, raising questions about who could have carved it and for what purpose. Some suggest it is a remnant of a lost civilization, a ceremonial marker, or a navigational reference now submerged by rising seas. Others theorize it could have been an anchor or base for larger structures that have since vanished. Though no corroborating ruins have been found, its origin remains tantalizingly out of reach. Residual chemicals clinging to the surface intensify the sense of the unknown. Layers of mineral deposits suggest intermittent exposure to oxygenated water, perhaps indicating periods of shallower water in the past. Tiny patches of organic residue were detected, faint and degraded but not consistent with modern marine life. These compounds hint at an interaction between humans, or another intelligent force, and the monolith, suggesting it may have been used or marked intentionally before sinking to its current depth. Even subtle environmental cues betray the monolith's presence. Light bends in a barely perceptible gradient as divers approach, and temperature probes sometimes detect minuscule differences compared to the surrounding water. Currents twist around its base, forming eddies that extend outward before fading. These variations, though small, reinforce the impression of a structure that is not merely passive, but one that shapes the environment around it in a silent, enduring dialogue. Its impressive scale and meticulous construction point to a high level of technical expertise. Moving and carving a single 15-ton stone would require careful planning, coordination, and an understanding of materials not typically attributed to prehistoric populations of the region. Its existence forces a re-evaluation of early human capabilities, or, alternately, consideration of influences we have yet to recognize, whether cultural, natural, or otherwise. In the end, the monolith stands in quiet defiance of time and expectation. Its sharp lines, precise carvings, and environmental influence create a puzzle that no current technology or historical knowledge fully explains. Explorers leave each dive with a sense of awe and unease, confronted by a silent sentinel whose purpose may never be understood. Time has preserved the monolith in near-perfect form, guarding secrets older than recorded history, and as currents swirl silently around its base, it waits for those who might someday decode its impossible design. The Lake Huron rock alignments. Ripples of light from the surface flicker across jagged stones, revealing lines so straight they seem carved with intent rather than chance. The formations fan out across the lake bed, intersecting at angles that suggest careful measurement, a geometry unlike any natural sediment pattern. Even from the submersible, the precision is startling. Each alignment seems to guide the eye, as if pointing towards something long forgotten and deliberately placed. These formations are the Lake Huron rock alignments, a vast network of stones positioned with remarkable precision across the lake bed. Each line and intersection appears intentional, forming straight pathways and angled connections that suggest planning rather than random placement. Researchers have noted that the stones vary in size but share consistent shapes and textures, reinforcing the sense that this is a carefully constructed system whose purpose has been lost to time. A delicate play of shadow defines the contours of the rocks, shifting as the submersible moves above. Grooves and edges catch fragments of light, creating an illusion of movement that exaggerates the alignment's regularity. Observers report a disorienting clarity, as though the lines themselves are inviting the eye to trace them, pulling attention toward points that remain unseen and unknowable. Small currents weave around the stones in subtle patterns, accelerating along certain channels while barely touching others. Suspended sediment traces these invisible pathways, revealing how the arrangements influence water flow in ways that appear deliberate. Tiny invertebrates cling to calmer pockets, forming clusters that seem to echo the geometry above, a silent interaction between organic life and the precise placement of stone. Closer inspection of individual rocks reveals wear patterns inconsistent with purely natural forces. Flat surfaces and rounded edges suggest selection, with smoother stones positioned in line and angular pieces marking intersections. Some bear faint indentations, perhaps symbolic, functional, or simply a product of ancient handling, but their distribution reinforces the impression that these alignments were designed with intention. Explorers have documented the alignments extending into deeper parts of the lake, following contours that correspond to prehistoric shorelines. Topographic analysis suggests the original builders accounted for rising and falling water levels, positioning stones to maintain geometric consistency even as environmental conditions shifted over centuries. Such foresight implies careful observation and planning long before sophisticated surveying techniques existed. The lakebed itself seems to participate in the arrangement. Minor depressions and ridges echo the alignments, forming terraces and microchannels that reflect the underlying stone geometry. Sediment deposition along these features is uneven, accumulating in predictable areas while leaving others bare. This subtle orchestration between rock and sediment hints at environmental knowledge, or perhaps a long-term effect of intentional placement interacting with natural processes. Light bends in curious ways across the formations, reflecting off angled stones to create shifting patterns that appear to move with the submersible. Even minute tilts in rock orientation produce distortions that can exaggerate straightness or create the illusion of additional lines. These optical effects magnify the sense of deliberate design, as if the alignments were constructed to be observed both physically and perceptually. Sonar scans reveal acoustic peculiarities when mapping the stones. Pings echo along the lines with subtle variation, bending differently from the surrounding sediment. This interaction with sound waves suggests that the stone's material or arrangement modifies their environment in unexpected ways, adding another layer to the mystery of the alignment's enduring influence. Historical accounts and oral traditions hint at these stones' presence, though records are fragmented and ambiguous. Indigenous stories occasionally reference pathways or markers in the water, but interpretation remains uncertain. The lack of artifacts or cultural traces nearby deepens the enigma, forcing researchers to focus on geometry, environmental influence, and spatial patterns as the primary evidence for intentional construction. Experimental reconstructions of the alignments emphasize their sophistication. Modern attempts to replicate the angles, spacing, and integration with natural currents reveal the difficulty of reproducing such precision without extensive planning and knowledge. These findings suggest that whoever arranged the stones possessed both technical skill and understanding of environmental dynamics that surpass expectations for the period. Some stones display faint mineral differences, subtle variations that reflect light differently or interact with currents in small ways. While minor, these distinctions create a visual rhythm along the alignments, drawing attention to intersections and guiding the eye across long stretches of the lakebed. This interplay of texture, color, and flow reinforces the impression of deliberate design. Biological life interacts with the stones in ways that accentuate their presence. Mollusks cling to particular surfaces, algae form denser mats in shaded recesses, and tiny crustaceans traverse the straight lines, forming patterns that echo the underlying geometry. Even without human observation, the alignments shape their environment, suggesting an enduring influence on both the physical and living components of the lake. Angles and intersections evoke a sense of communication, as if the lines themselves were designed to convey information. Whether navigational, ceremonial, or symbolic remains unknown, but the clarity and consistency of these formations imply that meaning was intended, even if lost to time. The precision and durability of the stones hint at a knowledge system that no longer survives. As the submersible ascends, the stone lines shrink into the dim distance, their ordered paths cutting across the lake bed like the remnants of an ancient blueprint. Each line points silently toward its next connection, a network of intention frozen in time, inviting contemplation yet offering no explanation. Lurking among the straight lines, an order unseen hints at knowledge lost to time, whispering through the silent lake bed. The pavement of the Indian Ridge. Light catches the edges of countless stones, glinting along straight lines that stretch across the ridge in a geometric pattern unlike anything nearby. Divers first noticed the formation while following an unusual current anomaly, but the arrangement quickly became the focus of fascination. The pavement extends for thousands of meters, each stone laid with an almost obsessive regularity. Unlike scattered boulders or natural rockfalls, these surfaces form a grid so precise it suggests design, an imprint of intention preserved beneath centuries of sediment. Each block appears meticulously shaped, its flat top and sharp edges defying erosion patterns typical of the Indian Ocean seabed. Scientists were struck by the uniformity. Stones of varying sizes maintain alignment with astonishing accuracy, creating lanes and corridors that hint at a long-lost purpose. Even subtle gaps seem deliberate, offering pathways for currents or perhaps serving some function now erased from memory. Currents behave strangely over the pavement. Flow accelerates in narrow channels between stones, while eddies form predictably at intersections, shaping the surrounding sediment in ways that mimic the grid itself. Tiny organisms congregate in these calm pockets, clustering along the stone edges as if following invisible instructions embedded in the layout. The interaction between solid stone and fluid water seems almost choreographed, as though the structure was built to coexist with its environment rather than simply endure it. Photographs taken at different angles reveal shadows that emphasize the grid's precision. Some dives show a shimmering, almost metallic sheen along certain surfaces, possibly due to mineral deposits or a combination of biological growth and erosion-resistant stone. These subtle visual cues reinforce the impression that the pavement is more than a random formation. It is a deliberate intervention in the seabed, designed to endure and command attention even in darkness. Traces preserved in the surrounding strata indicate the pavement has endured since a time far preceding human arrival. This temporal mystery deepens the enigma. If humans did not place it, what force could have shaped these stones into such consistent geometry? Theories range from unknown civilizations to natural processes that defy current understanding, yet no natural explanation fully accounts for the scale and regularity. Unlike the general ocean floor, the sediment encasing the slabs reveals unusual chemical compositions. Trace minerals appear in patterns that mirror the grid, hinting at processes that left a detectable mark without disturbing the stones themselves. These subtle signatures suggest that the forces forming or arranging the pavement were intense, deliberate, and enduring, leaving an imprint that modern instruments can still detect. Microfossils embedded in the spaces between stones provide additional clues. Some appear to cluster in straight lines along the pavement, unusual compared with the scattered distribution elsewhere. While it is impossible to determine whether these were influenced by water flow, stone placement, or biological behavior, the regularity of their arrangement hints at a connection to the stone's geometry, an interaction between life, sediment, and structure preserved over millennia. Optical surveys highlight small depressions along certain blocks, shallow enough to catch light but too uniform to be random. These grooves align perfectly with the larger grid, suggesting either functional channels for water or deliberate markers for navigation or observation. Regardless of their purpose, they contribute to the sense that the pavement was conceived with remarkable foresight and meticulous attention to detail. While navigating the pavement, observers experience a peculiar and unsettling awareness of their surroundings. The straight lines and right angles create a perception of order that feels almost unnatural in the chaotic ocean environment. Some submersible pilots describe the effect as compelling, a subtle mental pull along the grid lines that guides the eye across vast distances without conscious effort. It is a psychological echo of the pavement's physical precision, reinforcing its aura of deliberate intention. The topography encircling the slabs contains anomalies that emerge only under detailed examination. The ridge supporting the pavement is slightly elevated compared with the nearby seabed, forming a natural platform that enhances the grid's visibility from above. Gentle slopes and terraces suggest the structure was built to harmonize with the ridge, rather than merely occupy it. Even sediment accumulation appears affected, forming mini plateaus and troughs that mirror the larger geometric order. The alignment of the stones relative to magnetic north has sparked further intrigue. Preliminary measurements indicate that some lines closely match cardinal directions, while others align with subaquatic current patterns. The combination of orientation and environmental integration is difficult to reconcile with accidental placement, implying that whoever, or whatever, created the pavement possessed both spatial knowledge and observational skill far beyond what is documented for the area's early human activity. Acoustic studies reinforce the pavement's peculiar influence. Sonar pulses return with slight distortions along the grid, bending in ways that differ from the surrounding sediment. The effect is subtle but consistent, suggesting that the stone arrangement interacts with sound waves, perhaps intentionally. Whether this is a byproduct of material properties or a deliberate feature, it adds another layer of mystery to the pavement's construction. Even close inspection reveals no cultural remnants or artifacts near the stones. Unlike other underwater sites where tools, pottery, or structures provide context, the Indian Ridge Grid stands isolated, a silent enigma. This absence complicates attempts to assign origin or purpose, leaving researchers to focus entirely on geometry, environmental interaction, and the subtle marks left in sediment and marine life. Reconstructive experiments demonstrate the intricate planning and execution evident in the pavement. Even with modern tools, engineers struggle to reproduce the regularity, alignment, and environmental integration observed in situ. This suggests that the original builders, human or otherwise, understood both materials and long-term effects on their surroundings in ways that remain incomprehensible today. Every block, every right angle seems to convey information without words. Whether navigational, ceremonial, or functional, the clarity of the layout implies intention, a communication across time preserved in stone and sediment. Modern observers can trace patterns but remain unable to decode them fully, leaving a sense of incomplete understanding and enduring fascination. The ridge stretches silently beneath drifting sediment clouds, the pavement's grid lines forming a network that seems almost alive in its precision. Even centuries of water flow and sediment deposition have failed to disrupt the order, reinforcing the notion of deliberate construction rather than accidental formation. Decades of study have uncovered only a portion of what the pavement conceals: the magnetic anomaly of the South Atlantic. A restless pulse hums beneath the surface of the South Atlantic, invisible yet insistent, twisting compass needles and tugging at the instruments of passing vessels. Mariners have long whispered of strange currents and disoriented navigation, dismissing them as superstition or minor anomalies. Yet modern surveys reveal a true source: a massive buried object beneath hundreds of meters of sediment, altering the very magnetic field of the ocean above. Its shape remains hidden, its size estimated only through subtle distortions, but its presence is undeniable, a silent architect shaping the waters without ever revealing itself. Even the seabed bears witness to its influence. Sediment layers curve and swell in improbable formations, ripples aligning with an unseen force that molds them over centuries. In areas where the anomaly is strongest, these subtle undulations are nearly uniform, as if the buried mass imprints a hidden blueprint onto the ocean floor. These patterns do not resemble the chaotic deposits typical of currents or tides. They speak of control, an invisible hand sculpting the layers with geometric precision. Light behaves strangely over the anomaly, refracted through water thick with suspended particles. The sun's faint rays scatter in peculiar ways, and submersible lamps cast shadows that twist and bend unexpectedly, revealing gentle rises and depressions in the sediment that align with the hidden mass. The effect is so consistent that explorers often describe a sense of disorientation, as if the very space above the seabed refuses to behave normally. Fish avoid certain corridors entirely, leaving long, silent lanes across the shadowed depths. Plankton collects along subtle magnetic gradients, forming ephemeral patterns that trace the contours of the buried mass. Sessile creatures cling stubbornly to stable sediment, clustering in areas shaped by unseen forces. The anomaly has become an architect of life itself, subtly guiding ecosystems in ways that human understanding has only begun to perceive. Historic records offer glimpses of this hidden influence. 19th century logs from whaling and exploration ships recount compasses spinning wildly, instruments failing inexplicably, and currents behaving oddly. At the time, these entries were dismissed as exaggeration or error. Modern magnetic surveys reveal that many of these reports correspond precisely with the boundaries of the anomaly, suggesting that generations of sailors had inadvertently charted its influence long before it could be formally studied. Acoustic studies reveal additional complexity. Sonar pulses return warped echoes, and pressure sensors detect faint vibrations in the water. The anomaly's influence extends beyond magnetism, subtly interacting with density and acoustic properties of both sediment and seawater. These distortions are irregular yet measurable, hinting at a layered internal structure beneath the sediment, an arrangement that deflects, resonates, and reshapes energy passing through the surrounding environment. The mass itself may have an extraordinary composition. Some geologists speculate it could contain concentrated iron or magnetite, compacted in a dense core. Others suggest it might be a previously unknown form of sub-seafloor formation, possibly associated with ancient tectonic activity or extreme geological events. Its uniformity and the sharpness of its magnetic signature imply an order unusual in natural deposits, a coherence that has baffled researchers attempting to model it using conventional methods. Currents above the anomaly behave differently from those just meters away. Flow patterns bend and slow in imperceptible ways, measurable only with sensitive instruments, as though the hidden mass exerts a subtle hydrodynamic influence. Even temperature readings fluctuate slightly, consistent with minor shifts in water density induced by magnetically altered sediment. The buried object, though entirely unseen, interacts with its environment on multiple levels, shaping not only the seabed but the very water column above it. Attempts to probe directly with drilling equipment have met consistent frustration. Metal drills deviate, electronics fail, and sediment cores rarely penetrate past a few meters before instruments detect irregularities that force a retreat. Every failed attempt emphasizes the anomaly's dominance. It cannot be touched directly, only understood through indirect evidence. This has elevated the site to a near mythical status among oceanographers, a magnetic ghost that defines its presence through resistance rather than visibility. Comparisons with other known anomalies underscore its uniqueness. While magnetic irregularities exist in many oceanic regions, none match the scale, intensity, or coherence of this South Atlantic anomaly. Most are associated with volcanic activity, mid-ocean ridges, or mineral deposits, yet this mass shows no such context. Its location, composition, and magnetic clarity suggest something extraordinary, potentially predating surrounding geological structures and persisting unchanged through millions of years. Layers of overlying sediment bear subtle deformation, evidence that the mass has endured immense pressure over eons. The sediment appears warped in predictable directions, creating an intricate pattern of stress lines and microfractures. Some researchers interpret this as evidence of a massive stable object that has resisted natural forces for millennia, a silent relic of processes that predate the modern ocean. The anomaly's indirect influence is felt even in human perception. Submersible pilots report a sense of disorientation or vertigo when navigating above the site. Instruments swing, lights refract strangely, and sound seems distorted. It is as if the buried mass exerts an almost psychological pressure on observers, reinforcing its enigmatic authority over the hidden landscape. No artifacts, tools, or signs of construction accompany the anomaly, leaving its origin entirely speculative. Whether it is a natural geological curiosity or a remnant of some unknown ancient phenomenon, it remains an object of fascination. researchers continue to map, model and theorize, but the buried mass guards its secrets rigorously, accessible only through indirect readings and subtle environmental effects. The South Atlantic conceals its force with a patience older than exploration itself, impervious to discovery.